Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063, the game streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. TD in 1 hour here on the program for the TD Power Hour. Heard TD was fabulous. Ian, he and Jake.
Yes, absolutely, as always.
So we're very, very excited about that. Ian, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Welcome back.
Outstanding. It is nice to be back in the U.S. of A. It's very, very nice to be back. So do you know what today is, Ian?
The end of training camp?
The official end of training camp. Now, they will play one more preseason game. They'll do it on Sunday at New Orleans. We all know that. But now that training camp is officially over, I think it's time for a State of the Titans discussion. And the reason why I think we need to have a State of the Titans discussion is because throughout the entire process that we've talked about this team, there have been a lot of question marks, right? Even though they went through the draft and OTAs, we still didn't know exactly what they were going to end up doing at safety. Now we know. It's Quandre Diggs and Jamal Adams along with Amani Hooker. And this idea of, well, is Elijah Molden a start? No, he's not. And now we know. We know who's going to be at inside linebacker. It's going to be Jack Gibbons. He's going to start. We know who's at right guard. We know who's at right tackle. It's Dylan Radins and Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a.
PT.
PT. And we know what most people around the country think of the Tennessee Titans. They don't think of the Titans. Not a, well, they don't think much of the Titans, or, well, they think the Titans suck, or, well, no. They just don't think about the Titans really at all. They don't look at the Titans and laugh like they would with the New England Patriots or the Washington Commanders or Denver, one of those kind of teams. It's just you talk to somebody outside of Nashville about the Titans and it's like, oh yeah, the Titans, that team. But internally, I think the Titans believe in themselves. I really do. Maybe it's bravado. Maybe it's unfound optimism. I don't know. But the coach has said it several times. They don't look at this team like it's a rebuild. They think they can win games in 2024. I've been to practice enough to tell you that I really think when I listen to this team talk about themselves, and again, maybe it's an insecurity. Maybe it's they know deep down inside they're not going to be very good, but they don't want anybody to, so they're like, no, we're going to be good. But I don't think that's what it is. I think they really believe in themselves. And I think we can all agree the starting quarterback does not in any way lack for confidence. So this is a football team that believes in itself. And I don't want to speak for you all, the fans, but I am a fan, and I feel like I do have the pulse of the fans one way or another. And I think you guys have a lot of optimism too. Again, I was just in the Great White North up in Canada, and I was at a wedding where the people that were getting married currently live in Nashville. So there were a lot of dudes from Nashville who were there. And I kept getting boy, Jared, don't you think we're improved this year? I think this team's got a chance to be pretty good. And I'm not just basing all of this off of the conversations there, but again, I think that is a representation of the fan base. I think the fan base thinks this is going to be a good team. So what is the truth? Because that's what we all want to know. And unfortunately, we don't. And I don't think they do either. It's all speculation at this point. But I keep thinking back to what the GM used to say about the real heart of the NFL. He used to say there are tons of teams that are 8-8. Again, this was with a 16-game schedule. There are tons of teams that are 8-8. Sure, there are some really, really good teams that are going to win 12, 13, 14 games every year. In this case, it's Baltimore, Kansas City, San Francisco. They're going to win 11 games. They're going to win 12 games. They're going to win 13 games. We all know that. It would take a massive injury to one of the quarterbacks of Baltimore or Kansas City for that not. Commanders, Denver. I think those teams are examples of teams that, quite frankly, might just freaking stink. And we all know that. So the real question with the Titans is, are they one of those 8-8 teams? And what the GM used to say was, pretty much everybody's 8-8, but it's 4 or 5 plays over the course of a season that is the difference between 10-6 and 6-10. I even thought to last year, the Titans were 6-11, so they won 6 games. Well, last year they lost at Pittsburgh on Thursday Night Football. There was a 4th down throw Will Levis made on the boundary to Traylon Burks. He missed Kyle Phillips, who was wide open. You would hope that his next season, so this season, you would hope in year 2, Will Levis sees the open guy, knows where it's going to be, delivers the ball first down. But even if he doesn't, and he's throwing that ball to, say, Calvin Ridley, who's better than Traylon Burks, can't there be an argument made that, hey, maybe they win that game? So let's give them that one. What about Nick Folk? Let's say he makes his 2 extra points against the Texans in a game that went to overtime and against the Colts in a game that went to overtime. And what if Will Levis makes those throws that Ryan Tannehill didn't last year at New Orleans? Or L'Jarius Sneed stops Rashid Shaheed on that big 3rd down at the end of the game where Christian Fulton just let him run right by him. And so let's give that to the Titans. Now you're 10-7. That's a handful of plays over the course of a season that you just took a 6-11 team to 10-7. So the real question for me is, are the Titans one of those 8-8-ish teams where it just takes the improvement of the quarterback or some great coaching from Brian Callahan or a great play by a L'Jarius Sneed or a Calvin Ridley or one of the new guys, Tony Pollard, that they've brought in, to where they could be 10-7, where they could win 11 games? Where the opposite side of it is, if they don't make a couple of these plays, they're really a 7 or 6 win team? Or are the Titans a bad team? And I don't know the answer to that. If it was up to me, I would probably bet against it. But there's no real way to know. All of this at this point in the year is speculation. And the Houston Texans are an example of a team that everybody just knew was going to stink last year, and they ended up in the divisional round of the playoffs. So how good is this team? Now that we know it's going to be PT at right tackle, it's going to be Dylan Radins at right guard, we know there's not an upgrade coming at inside linebacker. We do know they've got real NFL safeties. Now we know, or at least it's been reported, that Arden Key's not getting suspended for 6 games. So they technically have a starter in that spot. They're not going to run Weaver or a 7th-round rookie out there. How good are the Titans? I think if you're the most optimistic Titan fan, and you're being serious with yourself, you're not doing what I did when I was in the 5th grade, which I thought every year could be the year. If you're being honest with yourself, I think the question has to be, is this one of those 8-8 teams where a couple of plays here and a couple of plays there make the difference? Especially a couple of plays by the guys you've paid the money to. Ridley, Simmons, Sneed, Awuzie, Tony Pollard. It's not going to be Josh Wiley, I would think. It's not going to be Josh Wiley who's making those 1 or 2 plays this year. Probably not going to be Chig. Certainly not going to be Burks. So that's the question here, which is, are they one of those teams or are they a bad team? I think we all know right now, especially given the question mark at quarterback, We can't say they're a good team. Question marks at right tackle, question marks at right guard, question marks at quarterback, question marks at tight end, question marks health-wise in the secondary, so on and so forth. So that's the question. How good is this team? Training camp is now over. Is this team capable of competing this year to working their way into the mix? Or is this just a straight up rebuilding year? The year the Arizona Cardinals had last year. Where are they? 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. That's where we're starting here on the program, 615-737-1025. There was a development. Now, I wasn't at practice yesterday, and I wasn't at practice today, but there was a development that I was noticing from afar, just keeping my eye on, that literally made me roll my eyes again. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company right here. And your phones, of course. 1025, 1063 The Game.
the end of practice yesterday, Traylon came down, he's a world champion, and went in back out there today, of course. But it seems like we see that kind of regularly, and I'm wondering if anything, like he falls awkwardly sometimes.
Sometimes he does, yeah. I mean, it sure seemed like there is, because Tua was doing some falling practice, I guess. So I've heard that you can maybe coach some of that. But I think the biggest thing with Trey is that when receivers go up for those balls and they go and turn, they land on their side a lot. And so he's really landed on the same hip like 3 times from the OTAs early in camp and then again yesterday. So it just hurts like hell at the end of the day. He fights through it. I appreciate his toughness, and he's come back both days that he's landed on it. But those things hurt. You know, the hit landing on your hip doesn't feel very good. So, but good to see him bounce back. I mean, he's a big, strong dude, and when he goes up in the air, there's a lot of body falling down. So sometimes the ground hurts a lot.
Traylon Burks hurt again. So
he was back out there.
He's hurt. He was hurt again, and now he's good to go. So yesterday I was traveling, and I was in the Atlanta airport waiting on a connection, which actually wasn't that bad. I mean, I was in the Atlanta airport for like 30 minutes and then got right on the other flight and came home. But I'm in the Atlanta airport, and I'm catching up on what went down at Titans practice, and I saw everybody put out there, Burks is hurt again, whether it was TD or PK or everybody else covering practice. At the end of practice, Burks comes down with a pass, and Burks is hurt again. And so I didn't see it, but apparently Burks almost made a catch, then landed hard, then went in with the trainer. And that's like the 3rd time this camp that something like that has happened. I also am not going to overlook the fact that Burks caught a pass against the 49ers in the first preseason game because, you know, he's too good to play in the second preseason game. So Burks caught a pass against the 49ers in the first preseason game, and then he ran off the field. And I don't know about you guys, but I thought he was kind of limping off the field after he made that catch. Then in Pittsburgh last year, on that 4th down, he goes up for the ball, and he had to be stretchered off the field. Now, I'm not saying Traylon Burks is faking it, but something with all of this is just not right. The concussion he suffered as a rookie at Philadelphia, I get it. And I 100% do not put that on him. It was a dirty football hit. It was not his fault. And earlier that year, turf toe against Indianapolis, that's a bad break. But I'm kind of sick and tired of this constant cycle that is, Burks didn't make the catch, and he got hurt, but he was only hurt for 5 minutes, and then he went back in. It's becoming tiresome. And it kind of leads to the bigger story as far as I'm concerned when it comes to Traylon Burks, which is this guy is so unreliable in every single possible way, except he does show up for practice. You know, he doesn't play in a lot of the games because he gets hurt. He doesn't catch the ball all the time when it's thrown to him. He certainly is not some sort of contested catch guru. And yet, he does show up, you know, OTAs, he's there. Training camp, he's there. It's never like, well, Traylon Burks didn't show up to the off-season workouts. No, he shows up to that. So that's the only thing he's reliable for. And yet, it feels like where we sit, Titan fans still think there's hope. Titan fans still think there's a chance that this young man can actually be a good player. How many times do you have to see the same thing happen over and over and over and over again? And again, I'm not saying Burks is faking it, but he had another incident this training camp where he went up for a contested catch. I watched the whole thing. He went up for a contested catch in the right sideline at the end of practice, and he fell hard, and he starts grabbing his back, and he kind of walks off, and I'm like, Burks is hurt again. And then against Seattle last week, late in the practice, Levis delivers a beautiful ball, and all of a sudden, Burks isn't there, and he cramps up, and Burks is hurt again, and Burks walks off the field. And then what happened yesterday? It's the same thing. Oh, no, he's fine. I mean, seriously, at some point, dude, I know you're not trying to get hurt, but at some point, can we just give it up? And it frustrates me because this is where, again, I wonder how good this football team is going to be this year. I wonder where they sit. Like, are they a legitimate contender? Not for the Super Bowl or anything, but could they be a team that with a couple of better players, with L'Jarius Sneed and Chidobe Awuzie instead of Sean Murphy, Bunting, and Christian Fulton, can this team win, make a couple of plays here and there and win a couple more games? And then we get back to oh, Jared, this coaching staff can unlock Treylon Burks. Just wait for it. No, let's worry about the receivers who actually matter. The great thing about this offseason for the Titans, even though they deny it, because once again, when it comes to Treylon Burks over there, if you say anything negative at all, anything remotely reflective of the truth, it's, how dare you say that, Trevor Maddich? How dare you say that they don't care that much about Burks because they signed 2 receivers in the offseason? It's like, I'm offended that you would think that this coaching staff does not think Treylon Burks can make it. By the way, the receiver that was taken right ahead of Burks in the draft, Jahan Dotson, did you see what happened to him today? Shipped out of town. That coaching staff in Washington, they're like, yeah, nah, it ain't going to work. And they got a 3rd in exchange for a 5th for Jahan Dotson and a couple of 7ths some way or another. Who cares about the 7ths? But I'm just so tired of this constant thing with Burks. It's like, Burks went down again. 615-737-1025. Our phone line is driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. So Cole in Nashville at 2:00 in all caps says, thank God you are back, Jared. My afternoons are finally back to their regularly scheduled programs. So that was Cole. Kevin, the next texter into the text line, says, God, your show sucks. Bring back the guy who filled in for you the last 2 days. Which one is it, text line? So, somebody help me out. Actually, don't text in about this because I want to read the football text. I don't want to get caught into the I hate you, I love you stuff. This is not the Barney show. But, I mean, you guys sometimes got to make up your mind one way or another. One texter says, my 2 biggest questions with the Titans are, 1, can Levis complete short 6 to 8 yard passes in tight windows without interceptions? And 2, can the Titans stop the run with all their blitzes? This is going to sound crazy. I guess I'm not really all that worried about being able to stop the run. Should I be? I mean, you have a 370-pound defensive tackle that you use the 38th pick on, who's probably going to be in on almost every rundown snap. And your other defensive tackle makes about $23 million a year. If you can't stop the run with those 2 boys in the middle, then don't even bother me about any of the other stuff. So I'm not really worried about that, but they are going to blitz a lot, which maybe it works. Hey, I've always said your best secondary is a good pass rush. So maybe they can get to the corner or get to the quarterback and the corners can hold an extra second or 2. But if you can't stop the run, then what's that? But they should be able to stop the run. If the 370-pound defensive tackle, who, again, you used the 38th pick in the draft on, if that guy can't stop the run, then you made a bad pick. And I don't think you did. He hasn't really flashed, in some of the bigger moments, but it's okay. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We'll get back into your phones here on the program, 615-737-1025. Plus, the one guy, I'm still a little worked up when it comes to the Burke stuff. Like, oh, Jared, this is the year. And I'm like, guys, I felt that way last year. But I'm different. I'm fool me once, shame on you. Or, fool me twice, I don't know. You guys are glutton for the punishment of getting your hopes up about Treylon Burks. Hey, tune in to Chase and Big Joe tomorrow from 9 to 11 for your chance to win tickets to see Sammy Hagar at Bridgestone Arena on August 28th. The contest is presented by Green Trees, so get excited for that. And this week's Nashville's Best Deal is Bavarian Beer House, Nashville's only authentic German beer hall. It's a place full of fun, food, music, and most importantly, beer. Enjoy traditional German bratwurst, schnitzel, giant pretzels, and more in an Oktoberfest-inspired space. Head to theGameNashville.com/deals now to get a $50 gift card for only $25 to Bavarian Beer House while supplies last.
That first period of offense didn't end great, except for the penalty that set you up for the field goal.
Yeah.
The 2-minute period didn't end well.
No.
What did you think of those two?
Not what we're looking for. Obviously, you'd like to find yourself in position to go score points in a 2-minute drill. Our defense, when they want to pin their ears back and rush, is hard to block. Our front's good. They've proven challenging for us. So, yeah, I mean, we'd certainly like to see better than what we saw today, but that's the ebbs and flows of camp. We've had some good drives, and we've had some ones that went the defense's way. So, as the head coach, I get to be excited that the defense played well because they did. But, yeah, I'd like to have gotten more from that, I think.
That was Brian Callahan today on the 2-minute drill. Again, I wasn't at practice, but I think I get the gist of it. Paul Kaharski on Twitter, quote, "Bad day for Will Levis and the ones on offense. Fortunate to move for a long field goal against the twos with penalty help. The 2-minute versus ones was a big fail." Paul does note that the red zone was better. This takes me to the 2-minute drill. So I asked Derek this question on his way out of the studio today. And I said, how many times does the offense have to suck in the 2-minute drill before it becomes a problem? Like, how long does it, at some point, don't we have to see the failures in the 2-minute and say, something might not be right? So last week against Seattle, they didn't do any 2-minute stuff on Wednesday, but they did do 2-minute on Thursday. In Seattle's 2-minute, they moved the ball somewhat effectively, had what would have been a controversial, if people could have watched it, had a controversial touchdown to DK Metcalf taken off the board because they claim Harold Landry sacked it. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't, I don't know. But Seattle at least moved the ball a little bit. The Titans, through one pass, it got intercepted, and that was it. And then, again, I wasn't at practice. TD will know better than I will. But when PK says they were awful against the first team and they were bad against the second team, but they got penalty help to move them into position for a long field goal, I'm starting to think you might not be good in the 2-minute drill. Guys, that's a problem. Because as I said at the top of the show, the Titans are going to be one of two things this year. They are not going to be a dominant football team this year, and you know that. They are not going to be Kansas City. They are not going to be Baltimore. They are not going to be San Francisco. They are not going to be that caliber of team. Even if everything goes right for them, by the end of the year, they could be a good team. But they're not going to be a dominant team. It's just not going to happen. You know that. I know that. And it's okay because most of the league is not that way, especially teams that are somewhat rebuilding. But what they could be is they could be one of these teams that is really at heart an 8-8 team, and they have 3 or 4 plays go their way. And all of a sudden, instead of being 9-8, 8-9, all of a sudden you get 4 plays that go your way, and now you're an 11-win football team and you're making the playoffs. And I'll use an example for the Titans. Jacksonville makes the playoffs, in my opinion, last year, if Calvin Ridley catches a ball that hit him in the hands that Trevor Lawrence threw in the last game against the Titans. But they didn't. Indianapolis makes the playoffs if they just convert a little 4th down with Gardner Minshew in the last game against Houston. But they didn't. So it's a 1 or 2 plays here and there. And I know the coach says when it comes to the 2-minute drill, the coach is just saying, well, hey, our defense is pretty good, folks. Well, guess what? Last week was against Seattle's defense. And I don't think Seattle, nor do I think you, are the 85 Bears. So if you're going to be one of these teams that makes 4, 5, or 6 plays to turn your season from 6-11 to 10-7, you're going to have to be able to win the games in the 2-minute drill. And it should be noted last year, yeah, Levis was good against Miami, but he was horrid in the 2-minute drill against Pittsburgh. And they didn't score late in the game against Houston. So at some point, I don't know how many, again, they won't cover practice anymore after today because training camp's over. But at some point, Brian Callahan's got to smell the coffee and say, oh my God, we are not good in the 2-minute. We got to make some changes some way, somehow. And I also don't like in that cut, Brian Callahan made a comment about how, well, we got the 2-minute drill done in the game on Saturday. Yeah, because you put your backup quarterback back in against Seattle's third and fourth string. Congratulations. You put your backup quarterback who started a playoff game last year in there. I mean, I'm sure the Titans in the Jeff Fisher era would have won more preseason games if at the end of the preseason game they took Kevin Daft or Billy Volek out of the game and stuck Neil O'Donnell, who had been to the Super Bowl, in. I'm sure they would have won some games that way. Ay, ay, ay. All right, back to your phone. 615-737-1025. Kyle is up next here on the program on Rand Carthon. Kyle, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Hey, Jared. Good to talk to you again. Miss you.
Sure.
But
good to be back.
Before you left, man, you were bagging on Rand pretty hard, and I can't get down with that, man. Look at the drafts he's brought in the last 2 times.
What was I saying?
You said he needed a babysitter because he wasn't competent to do his job.
I didn't say that.
Is that not right?
I didn't say that. I
I
said
read it
that's
on
what
Twitter.
this looks like. This is what it looks like with Chad Brinker as the president of football operations, doing the interview in the booth, being asked what he does, and not having any real answer to it.
I understand that, but the Titans seem to be going in a different direction. There's like 3 CEOs. We got different presidents. We got a GM.
Does that not sound a little fakakta to you?
That's too big of a word for me, man.
Does it not seem screwed up to you that, we got like 4 CEOs?
It's odd. It is very odd. I'm not in the corporate business, but I mean, we already said we're going to this new age. Analytics, it's just the new way, and we're kind of starting that.
How many teams in the NFL have multiple presidents?
I don't think any that I could really think of.
Okay, so is that, Kyle, is that really the new
out.
wave? And I'm glad you brought this up. Thank you for your call, Kyle. I'm glad he brought this up because a lot of people got mad about my comments on Monday. Ian, you were out on Monday. By the way, our condolences with you.
Thank you very much.
But did you see the Chad Brinker interview during the second quarter of Saturday's game?
You know what? I did not. No.
So Chad Brinker goes up in the booth and they up and down congratulate him for his promotion. And then they ask him what he does. And I did laugh pretty hard. Sometimes every now and then there's like the immature in me. So when he says on the broadcast his job is to service the head coach and service the general manager, it's hard for me not to laugh at that. But
easy.
He doesn't really answer the question. Again, he talks about, my job is to make it better for everybody else around here, to empower our leaders to be successful, to blah, 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 blah. You know what I'm talking about, Ian, even without listening to any of the cuts, don't you?
Okay. For the most part, I guess.
Okay. Pull up one of the cuts. Let's play it. And I wonder if this is what you think this is in your head. But so Brinker's up there in the booth. And they're congratulating him on his new job. They're asking him what he does. He doesn't really say. And then he talks about how he's part of the evaluation process and he's got to break out 4 hours a day to watch film. And I have heard like 8 different narratives from the Titans about what Chad Brinker does. And 8 different times, they're all kind of different. Somebody said to me that, hey, Chad is Rand's boss. He's the president. Rand's the vice president. Rand reports to Chad. That's what one person said. Another person said, no. This is like in baseball where the teams have a GM and a president. But with teams that have GMs and presidents, I mean, the GM reports to the president and the president picks the players. I know this. The Orlando Magic, my team, where my friend is like the 4th or 3rd or whatever it is in command over there, they have a GM and they have a president. And the president's the one who decides who to draft at 13 overall. And the GM works for the president. But here we're told it's the other way around, right? So that can't be the model. So nobody actually says what he does. Which makes me think the reason that nobody actually tells you what the guy does is because A, he either doesn't do anything, or B, they've made him Rand Carthon's babysitter. This isn't about Rand. This is about the Titans and the way they're treating Rand more than it is about Rand. And so, again, he said they're saying, well, Jared, you're bagging hard on Rand, saying that he can't. Look, I don't think that much of Rand as a GM, but that's a different discussion. This is about the Brinker stuff and all the bull crap that nobody is explaining because they don't want to tell us what the truth is. And I think it's because it's an inconvenient truth. All right, here's a Brinker cut. Tell me if this is exactly what you think this is going to be.
Chad Brinker is the president of football operations here in Tennessee. First of all, thanks for making time for us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I know last year you came in as the assistant general manager. As we take a peek now with the Seattle offense, they run right away up the middle. Nice job there by the interior of that Titans defense. But from assistant general manager to president of football operations seems to me like a pretty nice jump here from year one to year two. What does your new job entail?
Yeah, it is. It's a great opportunity for me. I look at my role as just I'm here to help bring our entire football staff together and make sure they have everything they need to succeed in their respected roles. And so I'm involved in a lot of things. My background is as an evaluator, a scout, worked on the salary cap. So I still help Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan in those areas. But my day-to-day responsibilities deals with cap management, data analytics, involved in football information systems, communications, just everything you can think of when it comes to the football operations.
I mean, what does he do, Ian?
Sounds like a collaborator.
I mean, what does he do?
Lots of different things.
So then why do they promote him? Because didn't he do those same things last year?
I'm not really sure.
Help me out. You guys have told me that you know the answers and that I don't. So again, this isn't about, this is not Jared doesn't think Rand's a good GM. That is a different discussion. I'm not saying I do think he's a good GM, but again, that's a different discussion. This is the craziness of this Titans promoting Chad Brinker and every opportunity he's given to tell us what he actually does. It is as vague as humanly possible.
Sounds busy, though.
Oh, I mean, it sounds very important. I don't know what he does. When somebody asks me what I do, it's very easy. I talk on the radio. That's what I do. So it kind of makes me think they're hiding something. And what would you be hiding? You wouldn't be hiding that, yeah, they promoted Chad Brinker, but he's really still the assistant general manager. You just wouldn't promote him. So what is it that is just so scientific? And that's what I think it is. What I think it is when I said at the end of last year that I would clean house if I was running the organization, time to start fresh. And that included Vrabel and Rand. And it was really more about just starting fresh than it was the whole thing. But what it meant to me was I think the Titans hired Chad to basically either babysit Rand or do Rand's job for him. And again, that's not about Rand. That's about the Titans. But people take it whatever way they want to take it. All right, back to your phone. 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game.
Today's the last open day of practices. Is it the last day of camp? And if so, what changes next week as far as the schedule?
Yeah, this is the last day of training camp. In terms of training camp schedule, we really don't have much next week. You have 2-3 days you use to start the prep on Chicago, but we'll transition more into our regular season cadence next week for practice. It's still not going to be exact because it's not the same. It's not a full week, and then those guys have that mandatory time off on the weekend. So it'll be starting to transition into regular season spot. This is our last official training camp day. We'll still be in pads for sure once, maybe twice next week. We'll see where we're at, but the training camp portion per se is over, and we're transitioning into regular season, get ready to play.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Today's the last day of training camp, and I get excited for the start of training camp, and I get excited for the joint practices. But as I said last week, I said that second Seahawks practice, that was my last practice of the year because, at this point, who really cares what happens in practice? We have the preseason games, we had joint practices, whatever, and now they're all closed and it's over. And the reason I say yes is not because I don't enjoy sweating my tush off out there, but it's because we're so close to the season. But the one thing I do hate is since they've eliminated the fourth preseason game and now we only get 3, it kind of feels like we're in this no man's land. Now college football will be going on next week. I mean, technically it's going on this weekend, but who cares? But it'll be going on next week, which I guess can get us a little excited, get us through. And it's a short week because it's a holiday.
Yep.
But it's like, it's a week without Titan football.
Season starts on a Thursday, so that helps too.
Jason is up next here on our program. Thank you for calling. Thank you for waiting. Go ahead, Jason.
Sure. Yeah, I wanted to comment on the Brinker's situation just because I heard you yesterday and I was kind of thinking about how I've seen that elsewhere. And it kind of reminded me of the model I think John Elway went to in Denver, which looked like more of a management of I know you talk about the salary cap that does get messy with the actual budget of the team, right? So if he's managing how the salary cap sort of
but they already have a guy that does that.
Budget.
They already have a guy that does that. His name's Vin Marino. He's one of the best guys in the league at that.
Right. So, but then you have, with the budget aspect of it, you have to, try to find what big players will fit into whatever scheme, let's say Rand comes up with. So he doesn't just run wild or whatever it is. But there is sort of a model that happens that's
But
been
how is
before.
that the Broncos model? Because with the Broncos, John Elway called the shots, and then they stunk. So he was no longer calling the shots, and he was just collecting a paycheck. But George Payton worked with ownership.
Right, but then he was in charge of that whole Manning situation, right?
But he was calling the shots then.
He wasn't general manager though, right? They had one, and he was president.
No, he was the president who picked the players who they didn't have a general manager. It was Elway.
Oh, got it. Well, yeah, I must have got that a little twisted, but the main thing was somebody just.
Okay, I'm over this. I don't want to talk about this anymore. Jason, thank you for your call. I'm over this. I don't want to talk about this anymore. One texter into the text line says, I do feel like if defense wins championships, going back to the 2-minute drill, one texter says, if defense wins championships, why can't this defense carry the team to the playoffs? Didn't we say the other day that this team has the potential to be a top 5 defense in the NFL? Who said that?
Said what?
Who said? This guy says that didn't we say this team had the potential to be a top 5 defense in the NFL? I know I didn't say that.
I don't know about this show.
Did you say it?
I don't think so. Maybe D-Mace.
So who's we?
D-Mace is high on the starting 11.
On defense?
Mm-hmm.
Thinks they can be top 5?
I don't know about top 5, but.
You know who I bet said it? If I had to guess?
Not Joe.
That's who I'm thinking said it. That if I had to guess, I'm thinking it's Joe. Top 5 defense in the NFL. Top 5? They've got 2 Pro Bowl caliber players on it right now. Snead and Simmons. top 5?
Quandre Diggs.
I mean, he's
new, but
he was a Pro Bowl caliber. He's making $3 million. Nick Folk is making more money than Quandre
he's made the Pro
Diggs.
Bowl. That's all.
Well, I mean, Jamal Adams is an All Pro.
That's true.
Hadn't been an All Pro in 50 years, but he was at one point an All Pro. I mean, no. Ben says 99% of this roster isn't going to be on the team in 5 years, and that's very concerning. We don't have enough young talent that it will be worth keeping around to re-sign. Well, 5 years is a long time in the NFL. 5 years ago was the beginning of Derrick Henry, Kevin Byard, like that group and their window that they had for a 3-4 year period. So 5 years is an eternity in the NFL if your name is not Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. And even with Lamar, because running is such a big part of his game, who knows about 5 years from now? But I mean, right now, I do think that the problem with the 2020 draft and the 2021 draft is that you don't have a lot of good young players that you can count on, and that's certainly a part of the issue. But I think the hope that they have is that Tavondre Sweat is one of those guys, and that Roger McCreary is one of those guys, and that Peter Skoronski is one of those guys, and that Tajay Spears is one of those guys. And we don't know if they are or they aren't. I mean, I'm hopeful they all are, but we don't know that. Joe's mad.
Yeah, he is.
In fairness to Joe, he does have at least a little bit of a right to be mad. We had no idea if he said it or didn't say it, and just made the assumption that he did say it.
You made the assumption.
Joe, for clarity's sake, Joe says that he did not say that the Titans were going to have a top 5 defense. Who said it? Somebody help me out here.
Going to or could?
Dylan says they said top 5 secondary, which I also believe is correct. Who is they? Who is they? Who said top 5 defense? Oh, my goodness gracious. All right, TD is in the house. Training camp is officially over. So, what do we think? What does TD think about it? We'll do that next. Stillman & Company, 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Tune into the sounds on 94.9 The Fan today as they take on Jacksonville with the first pitch at 6:35. Sounds Baseball on 94.9 The Fan, presented by Twin Peaks Family Leisure, 5 Points Roofing, and Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. It is 3 o'clock on a Thursday, which means it's time for the TD Power Hour. First of all, yesterday, 4 TD Power Hours.
Yeah, fun show,
Thank
man.
you for that, by the way.
Yeah, welcome back, by the way. Jake and I had some good times. I'm not going to lie. I poked fun at you.
I'm sure.
You know I'm going to.
I'm sure you
but
did.
it's all in love. And yeah, Jake is really good, man. Really good.
Jake's got talent now.
Yeah.
Now, I was reading through the text line today, and there have been some texts about how yesterday was more positive than the show is typically, which isn't saying that you guys were positive. I think it's in connection to sometimes how negative this show is.
I just think it's just balance, and
which would be more
framing.
positive sometimes.
We talked about it. It's framing, right? Like, I'm not going to call a guy, what's the word you use for like your Mason Kinsey's and your Scarbini. I'm not going to call a guy that. I'm not going to, say a dude sucks. I say, hey, look, man, he could get better from this perspective. I talked about Jamal Adams, and I was like, Jamal Adams is not a guy you want in coverage. It's not saying, hey, Jamal Adams sucks, but it's like basically the same thing. He's not a guy you want in coverage. But if you use him correctly, you have him blitzing and you have him coming up in attack. That's all. It's not positive versus negative as much as perspective.
Breaking news: TD is a nicer guy than me. I don't know if they knew.
I would just say more balanced.
That's well said. Training camp's over today, and so where we sit today, how do you feel about the state of the football team?
I think the team. So there are some interesting stats that I was able to pull. In correlation to the spending that they've done, as well as the expected boost in wins.
Is this going to be an ESPN.com story?
It will be. It will be. I don't know when, but next week probably. But anyhow, I think the expectations are there, and that's why I asked Callahan. That's why I asked J.C. Latham. That's why I asked Levis. That's why I asked Jeffrey Simmons about the pressure, if you feel pressure. And I think when you have a guy like Will Levis leading you, his answer, pressure is a privilege. It's like you love to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked Callahan about it, and he said that pressure is something that he welcomes because it means that there's expectations. And you want expectations because that means that you set yourself up in a position to succeed. And he's 100% right. So I think overall, this team is expected to do better just simply on the strength of what they did in the offseason. There are still a lot of strides. Today was not a good day for Will Levis. It was not a good day for the offense. It just simply was not.
Mm-hmm.
They struggled. There were 2 completions to start 7-on-7. Team period did not go that well. He and Ridley had a miscommunication during 7-on-7. They didn't get the ball into the end zone in 2-minute team period. There was a lot left to be desired. Now, one thing I will say, Tyler Boyd is
throw it to him every play.
He's the safety net for Levis. Now, defensively, the thing that's so interesting about this is they're out there without Snead and Awuzie. This secondary, I think, could be very good with those guys out there. McCreary, although Ridley beat McCreary deep on a Levis throw, the defense, I think, can be really good. They just have to find depth behind Sweat, Sebastian Joseph Day, and Jeffrey Simmons.
Well, and the offense has to give them a chance, because if they're out there 35 minutes with Tavondre Sweat, it's just not going to work.
It's not going to work. And it's not just with Sweat. It's with all of them. All the way down to Amani Hooker, 35 play, only playing 35 plays and having your defense play 60-something, 70.
Yeah, you can't do that. So I was thinking about this earlier this morning, which is there are 3 categories of teams. There's the really, really good teams, the Kansas Cities, the Baltimores, the San Franciscos. We know they're going to be there in January. There's the really, really bad teams. And I don't think the Titans are a really, really bad team.
Mm-mm.
Whereas like New England might be really, really bad this year. And then, Floyd used to always say that the league is designed to be 8-8, and that it's 3 or 4 plays one way that make you a 10-6 team, or 3 or 4 plays the other way that make you 6-10. And think about all the big plays A.J. Brown made when he was here, and they just happened to win 10 and 11 games. And so I think the Titans are most likely to be one of those teams. And even going back to last year, I think you can argue they were probably one of those teams and they didn't make the plays. Whether it was Tannehill missing Chigakonkwo in New Orleans, or whether it was, Levis in the not connecting the 2-minute drill at Pittsburgh, or remember that one that he overthrew Spears where it looked like on TV that it was Spears who screwed up. And then when we looked at the film, it was actually Levis that threw Spears off. Like those kind of plays. And that's the difference. And I just wonder, the only way they're terrible is if the quarterback just happens to not be good. And I don't think that he's a bum.
I think, man, he just, whatever it is causing his passes to fail, they have to hone in and fix that. I don't know what it is. I don't know, because I saw him go through drills on following through with QB motion with Rob Williams. I'm just like, make to the point where like he would throw it and he had to slap his thigh when he was done, just to reinforce following through. I don't know if that, I don't know what the issue is, but his passes are sailing.
Because you said that Ridley beat McCreary on one and a Levis throw, and I'm like, so where did the ball end up? Was it in front of him, behind him?
It was high. It was high. It was across the middle, like a crosser, which you'll see a lot of those. And I know a lot of people say, hey, he got his hands on it, he has to catch it. You're right. He does have to catch it. You do have to make a play for your quarterback.
Sure.
But what separates, and this is what, and I know you're not a big Tua guy, and I'm not either, especially after his comments and stuff. That's what separates a Tua from an average quarterback. That ability, that crosser, to throw it to where the receiver could accept. That's what separates Ryan Tannehill.
That's exactly what I was thinking about, was that is what Tannehill made his bread and butter on.
Yep.
When you can mirror that with the play action that they had with Derrick Henry.
And just the opening, right? Being able to throw it to a spot where the receiver doesn't have to alter his stride. Like he could just run right through the catch and pull away. And it was no coincidence that even Corey Davis was catching the ball on those strikes and turning it upfield.
Well, what was crazy about how Tannehill could do that was the first game Tannehill started against the Chargers. It was a night and day difference, that it was like, oh, wow, he's putting the ball right on these guys where it's supposed to be. And Mariota wasn't doing that. But going back to that 8-8 team, kind of thing, have they improved the talent enough to be able to make those 4 or 5 plays over the course of the season to get them to 10 wins-ish?
If they don't win 9 games, it's a disappointment.
Really?
It's a very disappointing year if they don't win 9 games. I think if you look at, and I know Derrick Henry's subtraction is tremendous, but given the overall, now this roster is a little more balanced, where you have, your Kenneth Murray, who should be a really good playmaker. You have we know all the additions. We're not going to go over.
Yeah.
But it's more balanced, and the influx of talent should really warrant a +2 wins perspective. But if you go by the winning expectation for the money that they spent, is even more than 2 wins,
which you will be able to read at ESPN.com. And now I'm in this tough place. It's like having the author of the book on the show, and it's like we want people to buy the book, but I now kind of want to know the money and what the money equals.
So they spent $318 million in total money. Now the guarantees is like 178, but the $318 million in money, total money, is higher than any other team in the league. Now,
even more than San Francisco and the Eagles and all those teams that spend through their tush.
As far as the additional
the long
spending,
term, what it could be.
Yeah. So you look at that, and I asked for 5 years. They went back to 8 for whatever reason. But over the last 8 years, the team that spent the most money, only 2 of them didn't make the playoffs.
Was one of them the Raiders?
One of them was the Dolphins. I have to go back and look at the notes, but one was the Dolphins team, and they were like 10-6.
Yeah.
So it still was respectable, but yeah. So there's a lot to be expected from this team. And then also you just look at the breath of fresh air, so to speak, that's permeating throughout the building, even with the players. I forget who said it today, but it's like one of the verbal leaders on this team, you never would have thought, Nicholas Petit-Ferrer. Yeah, the guy you guys call PT has been one of the more vocal guys on this camp.
And I thought kind of one of the knocks on him was that he has all the physical tools, but that he's not
I used to joke about him, Biggie Smalls. Biggie had a song, Warning, right? And he said he got the Rottweilers by the door and he feeds them gunpowder so they could devour the criminals. And I'd be like, they gotta feed MPF gunpowder so he,
Yes.
gets rougher and gets, nasty.
And they say he's one of the vocal leaders.
But
of
you
the
hear,
team.
you hear him. Yeah.
615-737-1025. TD is with us here for the Power Hour. Coming up next, what do we think about the offense? TD said today was a bad day for the offense, but where have they made progress from where they were last week against Seattle? What about the right side of the offensive line that Brian Callahan kind of gave a half endorsement to the other day? By the way, I reserve the right to pull the plug at any time. Well, you are the coach. So, I mean, if you want to take Levis out and put Malik in, you can do that. I don't think you're going to, but you can do that. What does TD make of it? We'll do that next. Stillman and Company. It's a TD Power Hour, 102.5, 106 The Game.
When you talk about offensive linemen getting chemistry with one another, like Radens and NPF on the right, is it mainly timing or anticipation about what the others do? What are some of the
all of it?
chemistry?
All of it. The communication part's really big. Communicating what you're seeing and guards, centers and guards and tackles that play together. There's sort of a sense of what's going to happen. They play enough together. They feel whether they're snapping off a stunt or they're making a call that sometimes they don't get the call out and the defense is moving. It's those things where the chemistry and communication really come into play, and playing together for a long period of time benefits you because you just have a great understanding of what the guy next to you is doing. So that's probably the biggest difference. I mean, guys, you can certainly play together and not have that. But there's a benefit to the continuity of spending a lot of time playing together. In that regard, where you just understand what's happening with the other person. There's not a lot of communication that has to happen. You just know because you played with them for so long.
Brian Callahan there on the offensive line, the chemistry, getting it all figured out. TD, last week against the Seahawks, I wasn't happy with the offense. So this week, have we seen some improvement in the offense? What are we looking at right now with where the Titans' offense sits? You said today was not a good day for them.
Yeah, you know who else today was not a good day for with J.C. Latham?
Really?
Yeah, he gave up would-be sacks to Khalid Duke. You know who that is?
Yes, it is 56.
3. But
53, I was
now
close.
56, that's Kenneth Murray
That's
Jr.
Murray, yeah.
But yeah, he gave up one to him, and I think Harold beat him. Yeah, Harold beat him. So
not exactly Montez Sweat there.
No, there's room for concern. I would definitely, if I was a fan, had a horse in the race, etc., I would be a little concerned and curious how things will work out. I think this offense still has a stride to hit. There's signs, though, because you look at like yesterday, Ridley and Levis, they had the chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
They had it. Tyler Boyd, as I mentioned, too. Even Traylon Burks made a nice catch today on a slant. Very good release, got inside, extended to catch the ball, went to the ground, popped up, and the next play was a pass to Tyler Boyd on a crosser, and they were moving down the field. Those are the good things to see, but there are still too many mistakes. There's pressures coming. I think Denard Wilson is going to blitz a little more than the average defense you're going to see, so that's a good thing. But yeah, it's not a finished product by far, and they're going to have to get it together if they expect to win even the Bears game. They have to improve upon their performance.
So I like Brian Callahan. I think he's a good man. I hope he's a good coach. I mean, I see some signs that make me think he's a good coach. But every time the offense has a tough day, he gets up there and says, well, Denard's defense, that's a tough defense to go against. That's to the point that I'm kind of tired of it. I'm like, hey, I know your defense is good, but like this is what happened last year. And we kept saying, man, this defense, I mean, this might be a special defense. Mm-hmm. And the Titans defense was okay last year. I think it was 18th in the league. It probably would have been better if the offense had stayed on the field a little bit more. But I don't think that this is a Baltimore Ravens 2000 defense.
Right.
And
right.
that's what worries me, is that it kind of feels like the coach has brushed off a lot of the offensive struggles. And maybe that's just for the public thing, but it's making me nervous when I see a 1-play, 2-minute drill against the Seahawks and Levis throws a pick and it's like, well, we didn't like it, but that's a good defense. We're going out there. We got plenty of time to get it fixed. And then they go 2 minutes today and they don't do anything. It is starting to make me very, very nervous about where the offense is. And is it one thing that is slowing the offense down, or is it multiple things that they've got to iron out in the next 14 days or whatever it is?
I would say there's multiple things. Like today, one of the drives, actually the final drive that they have in team, who was it that got it? Oh, actually it was Harrell. It was Jalen Harrell got Levis, and it made it like 4th and forever. And Levis tried to fit one into Calvin Ridley, and Jack Gibbons could have intercepted it. I don't know if he dropped it on purpose, like to knock it down on the 4th down, or it just hit him in the bad spot in the hands. I don't know. But either way, that ended their series,
Right.
These are the things that you can't have happen. You have to be able, on 3rd and long, you have to be able to avoid the sack. You know what I mean? You have to. So protection, I think, is still somewhat of an issue. I think, finding a way to connect on the deep pass is something that still continues to be an issue. Although they did connect on one. It was about 18, 19 yards. But it was nice over-the-shoulder catch in that corner of the end zone that Ridley had over McCreary. But you need to also – the run game, like everything has to get better. That's really just the Cliff Notes version. Everything has to get better. It's not sharp. It's not where you would expect it to be you want it to be to expect to win games.
Sure.
Put it that way.
What do you make of the right side of the line? Brian Callahan asked about it after the Seahawks game was, yeah, PT and Radens are playing the best, but I reserve the right to pull the plug on it. But as of right now, they're the starters. What did you make of that? And what do you make of what it is so far?
If you pull the plug on that, like the best of what you
heard he was asked about the swing tackle today, and he started talking about Jalen Duncan. And I'm like, if Jalen Duncan's a swing tackle of this team, Lord have mercy, please do not let a tackle get hurt.
Yeah, offensive line.
And I know Bill Callahan's the guru.
I don't care.
Right.
You can't have, just with what you can't have any injuries. Because if you do, man, it's going to be bad.
Well, Brunskill can get by a little bit if he's got to play. So if it's one of the interior guys, even though it doesn't sound like Brunskill's been doing all that well.
He's solid. He and
I think I'd make Brunskill the swing tackle.
He and Rupchich had a nice play today to spring Jabari Small for I believe it was Small. It might have been I don't remember who the back was, but I think it was Small.
If Jalen Duncan is a swing tackle, I'm putting Brunskill at tackle if somebody gets hurt.
Well, he could play tackle. He started games there.
Exactly.
So the point is there's a lot of trust or a lot of I don't know the right word, but Dylan Radens and Petit Ferrer, those guys got to stay healthy. And I hate to say it, but it would take an awful lot for them to play themselves out of the position, given what's behind them.
What bothers me is that we were told it was going to be a battle in training camp for the jobs. And I think they meant that when they said it. Sadiq Charles just up and quitting is not something that they expected was going to happen.
Right.
But I'm not really sure either guy really earned the job. I think it's more so process of elimination. Radens is going up against Charles. Charles quits. Well, now there's one guy there. And they kind of tried to make Rupchich a thing, but I thought Rupchich struggled a little bit on Saturday night.
He's been up and down.
And then at right tackle, I, again, think that Petit Frere had the inside edge the whole time, but there's a lot of guys. I think you can sign guys off the street that could probably beat out Jalen Duncan and John Ojukwu at the right tackle spot.
I wouldn't, well, look, Chris Hubbard, was a guy they signed off the street and he became a starter.
Right. Like
about to fly to Jamarco Jones, he couldn't stop fighting, but
Do you remember LaRaven Clark?
Mm-hmm.
Played in Indianapolis as a swing tackle for a little bit. Titans signed him up to the practice squad 2 years ago. I think he started.
He was a very athletic guy, Texas Tech.
I think you could go get a LaRaven Clark, and that guy would be better than anybody that Petit Ferrer would have had to beat out for the right tackle job.
Well, yeah, I think what you have is you look at the board, right? They're going to have a board of guys that they're watching.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Just like other teams are watching guys like David Martin Robinson, guys like,
Sumer Sports came in here and they said, that's Thomas Dimitrov's analytic company. And they said that, one of the services that they give the teams that pay for their services, one of the services they provide is they keep up with who might get cut by all these other teams. And I kind of thought, isn't that the job of the team? Isn't that the job of the team that, hey, well, let's watch this guy because he might get cut in Philadelphia. And
can never have too much information, though.
One thing that I am certain of is I think some teams value their own players a little too much. So they're like, we're agonizing between guy number 53 and 54. I'm like, there's probably 47 guys that belong in the NFL on this team. Everybody else, if you got to dump them to claim somebody else, dump them.
I asked Callahan that question on Sunday about hiding guys.
Yeah.
When do you get to the point where you want to hide them versus evaluate them because you have a complete evaluation, what you feel is one, with David Martin Robinson in mind and Matthew Jackson, right? And he said, well, a lot of times you may really be high on a guy and feel like you're going to lose him, but there are 31 other teams who have guys on their roster that they feel the same way about. So another thing you got to remember is if you're David Martin Robinson and you get cut, why would you go to Cleveland's practice squad instead of the Titans practice squad, right?
Well, there is a chance that Cleveland might offer you more money on the practice squad. But
Okay,
I know what you're saying.
The money is cool and all, but I'd rather go where I think I could climb back onto that roster a little bit better and go where I know the scheme already. That's just how I would do it. You know,
Sure.
so I think there's decisions and things that you know have to be made. Now, a lot of times, actually, I stand corrected. If they were to grab somebody, they would have to cut somebody off of their 53. So you know, there's a lot of juggling and stuff that goes on. And the roster people that you mentioned, that's just another cross reference, another service. Believe me, I know for a fact with DMR, teams are
Oh yeah, the Seahawks.
yeah.
I already feel like the Seahawks would take him.
Oh,
in a heartbeat.
they reached out about him.
Right.
Yeah.
And so now is the time of year where teams are starting to call saying, well, you know, and I think that, for instance, trying to think of a position where the Titans have a little bit of depth. Let's say there's a team that has no corners and you call somebody and say, well, we can trade you Trey Avery, you know, for this guy that you're going to cut because you've got too many guards.
Yeah.
And so we can do something like
yeah.
that. And I wouldn't rule that out either.
Yeah. Now, when I said Seattle reached out, I'm not saying they reached out to the Titans. They reached out to Martin's representatives. You know what I mean? So a lot of times
I think that's against the rules.
Not there's conversations that you have like hey,
Oh, I know.
We'd be interested.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I think that's still tampering though. But who knows?
I don't know.
TD is with us, 615-737-1025. We'll hit your phones at the end of the hour, as we always do, 615-737-1025. There is still one more preseason game. And Brian Callahan's hinted that we might see some real players on Sunday at New Orleans. And is there anybody that's still working to make the team? TD will weigh in on that next. Stillman and Company on a TD Power Hour. It's 102.5, 106 for the game.
How do you plan to maybe approach final preseason game and decide who needs work, who doesn't, as you edge closer to the season?
My intention as of today, again, that can change as the week unfolds with the injuries and who's available and all that stuff. My intent is to play the starters, play a significant amount of snaps for a preseason game. I'd like to see our starting offense play, somewhere in the 3-ish series. Whatever that might look like. Defensively, we have a number of guys that aren't going to play anyway. Obviously, Cheeto and Legarius and Jeffrey and Harold won't play, but I'd like to see some of those guys that didn't play last night play a little bit this week. But again, that's fluid at this point, just with nicks and bruises and all that stuff. But I would like to play. I'd like our starters to play. I think we need to. And I'd like to see a little bit more football, because then we'll be off for what amounts to, close to 2 weeks before the opener. So they won't see the field again playing live football. And I think that we need to play.
Brian Callahan says, let the boys play, TD, on Sunday at New Orleans. I think the Titans, I think this is a great opportunity for them to really treat this as like, hey, let's prepare for Chicago. This is going to be what it feels like, because it's a road game. Chicago's going to be a road game. It's a 1 p.m. start, which is kind of similar to a noon start on a Sunday. And I think that's all great. And it's great for us because it'll feel like a regular Sunday watching a game. What do we make of this last game against New Orleans? Obviously, the starters are going to play because the coach says the starters are going to play. And also, what do you think he wants to see out of the starters playing on Sunday?
Fluency on offense. Fluidity rather. He wants to see that on offense. I wouldn't be surprised. Let's say that first drive is like a 15-play drive. He goes over 7 minutes, 8 minutes, and it results in a touchdown. I wouldn't be surprised if they're done.
Pull the plug right there.
I think that's really, and he's saying 3 series or, a few series, because I think he's giving that leeway, hey, I'll give him time, like to show me something, to develop some type of rhythm. They really need that on offense. And here's the thing that's crazy though. They've moved the ball well, and they've gotten a lot of yards overall on offense. But I think the focus is on the first team.
Yeah.
Right. Not as much, the Julius Chestnuts and, the Bryce Olivers and those guys. It's on the others. And they, 2 drives? They've had 3 drives, I think 2 drives that both resulted in touchdowns, which is good.
Right.
But still, you want to see a larger sample size.
I think what he's leaving himself open to as well is I think he kind of wants to walk off on a good note. Right. So, and the other thing he can do is he can wait for New Orleans to take their starters out and then score a touchdown and then say, all right, we got the positive drive. We scored. And so we're on to Chicago with the positive momentum. I also do think, and again, you were at practice this week. I wasn't, and I'm not claiming to be. I think they need the work. I think they need the reps together as an offense to improve and get better.
They do need the reps. And I'll say this, that throw that everybody, had much to do about, the Calvin Ridley not running, that doesn't happen in a game. I guarantee you Calvin Ridley runs that down and, catches that in the game.
But it was hot outside that day, TD.
No, I'm going to tell you what, adrenaline is just things are just different on game day. You know what I mean? Even just like a regular practice to joint practices, the intensity is different. You go from joint practice to game, it's just different. I think he would have ran that down. But you know what? He's a human being. Calvin Ridley is a person.
So maybe this is the fan in me talking. I think Ridley and Levis are going to figure it out. I mean sooner rather than later. I think that we're sitting here. I know what Brian Callahan was talking about when he brought up the Jamar Chase thing. It was a big deal in camp that why can't Jamar catch? And then they played the games and Jamar was Jamar.
Those things have a way of working themselves out. And I'll tell you a good sign of it. Actually, yesterday, Ridley ran a 10 to 12 yard in breaking route, right? He was on the right-hand side. He set that outside foot in the ground, right, to plant and cut inside off of. Right as he set that foot down, Levis threw the football. Beautiful catch, just beyond the corner before the safety catch, go down, so you're not getting a big hit. that's an example of the chemistry. They have a degree of chemistry. It's just going to get better and better the more you play. That's just, it's just like when you and Floyd, the GM, when you guys first started, it was cool, but then it developed into something to where you could start a sentence and he'll finish.
I think it's funny you say that. I think the real thing, like in radio, like if anyone's like, and maybe this is like inside baseball, I feel like honestly this is something we talk about off the air. The one where I feel like the most chemistry I feel is on Sunday mornings with Chris and Derek. It's like, I know how to get them going. They know how to get me going. I know the exact time when it's like, hey, I need to shut up and let the experts talk about the game. I know when, I'm going to go crazy about something like, and I mean, I think, we won the award or whatever. And I think our Sunday pregames are really good. And it's just, that doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
Especially with two guys that didn't spend their lives training to be on the radio. And so I totally understand that. So I think they're going to figure that out. But the other thing too, and again, I like Brian Callahan. I think he's a good coach. That doesn't mean that I don't criticize little decisions because I just disagree. I was disappointed. Chig didn't play Saturday.
Yeah.
I was disappointed. Burks didn't play Saturday.
Latham.
I was disappointed that, I was a little torn on Latham and Skoronski.
I thought he should have gotten the reps.
But Radens and Petit
oh yeah, them
play.
Yeah.
What are we doing? It was almost like I felt like Brian Callahan didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings. Where it's like, hey, you're trailing. If I put you out there and I don't put anybody else out there, then it's going to hurt your feelings that you don't feel like. And then he puts NWI out there. NWI probably has the best game out of anybody other than the kicker. He puts NWI out there.
Oh, reliable.
And it's like, why the disrespect to NWI?
NWI is just over. I said it yesterday, man. He's that Honda Accord that you see driving through the neighborhood. You're never like, man, that's a really nice car.
If Levis and Ridley don't get it figured out, he's going to be throwing a lot of passes to NWI.
Yeah, I think Tyler Boyd is going to get the most targets. But yeah, I mean, there's something to that. I think that right side should have played. I think Burke should have played. I think that is something that should have happened in the preseason game.
But it can't be that Brian Callahan was worried about hurting those guys.
No, I don't think it was. I think he really
he's smarter than that.
Let me rein it back because I just remembered that practice on Wednesday. Like that was I don't think I've ever seen a practice that long.
Yeah, but I'm not asking those guys to play the whole game.
Right, but
I do remember it being like, if they don't finish this practice soon, I'm going to have to leave for the show.
I think he got maximum work out of those guys and felt like that work that they got in those 2 days was enough. And that's essentially the route that joint practices are going, and that's replacing the game reps in the preseason, which I'm not mad at that because that gives your Bryce Olivers and your Andrew Rupchich and Cole Spencers and all of those guys an opportunity to, Victor Cruz it, or as Brian Callahan continuously points out, Terrell Davis.
Did you feel that way Saturday when you were sitting up in the press box watching all those players play?
I actually got a little bored on one stretch of the game. I will not lie. I did get bored on a stretch of it.
That's when we go down to Corey Curtis on the sideline to talk to somebody because we got to. The one thing I will say, though, about like with Callahan and playing the guys in the joint practices and everything else is I do feel like some of these guys, if I was the coach, and I know it's easy to say if I was the coach, it's like saying if I was the president of the United States, this is what I would do. And it's like, well, you're not the president.
We don't talk politics on this show.
Well, that's not really politics, even though the position is a political position.
Right.
But what I do believe is even though Petit Frere and Radens are gifted starting spots in large part because Sadiq Charles quit and because the competition for Petit Frere wasn't very good, I still want to make them feel like they have to earn those jobs. And by playing them in that game is kind of like the message, even if it's 10 snaps, it's kind of the message like, hey, you're not where Lloyd Cushenberry is on this team right now. And you're not where Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears are with this football team right now. And so that's something I feel like he kind of missed out on. And then I don't know, where do you stand on the whole rookie thing? Because there were a lot of people upset that Latham and Sweat didn't play. And that didn't seem to bother me that much.
I give him the reps. I give him the reps, but I mean, I'm kind of old school from that perspective. I feel you do play out the preseason, not every game or every snap, but I think a series or two.
I think not playing in the preseason last year hurt Ryan Tannehill because I don't think he was ready for the rush the first week against New Orleans, and I think that kind of affected him in that whole game.
Yeah, he had some off throws, the Chig one, the Tajay one.
And
yeah, I mean, it could have been.
I think it was because he didn't know, hey, Dillard's really bad, dude. You just be ready. It's and then week 2 against the Chargers with Bosa and Mac, he, it wasn't like Dillard got good, but he figured it out. All right, to your phones for TD, 615-737-1025. We hit them all the time. 615-737-1025. Stillman & Company, 1025, 1063 The Game. I looked at the wild card standings yesterday. Felt a little bit okay, and then the Braves just blew it. So, who knows? TD Power Hour.
See the shirt. See the shirt.
I did see the shirt.
Appreciate
I actually
you,
like
Ian.
it because I loved NBA Jam so much when I was a kid.
Yeah. I had to get this. I got this from Doc Gooden's jersey retirement. You see the 16 on the hat right here. I bought the same hat for Strawberry too. I had to go to both of them.
So you got them both?
Yeah. Same exact hat. It just has an 18 here instead.
Well, I did laugh out loud I posted a story on my Instagram over the weekend when I ran into this like random sports store in Toronto, and they had like all
The Expos.
and they had the Expos. And TD
I
was
saw-
like, "Woo, look at those Expos jerseys!"
Yeah,
I'm
man.
glad somebody else has the same appreciation.
I
that
hated the
have.
Expos as a rival of the Mets, but man, I love those jerseys.
So you hated Gary Carter, then you like Gary Carter?
Yeah, love Hubie Brooks, then hated Hubie Brooks. But the Lionel DeShields and Marquise Grissom, as a Braves fan, I'm sure you can relate to Marquise Grissom.
Sure.
I always liked those guys, though. I always liked those guys.
When I was in women's basketball, we recruited Delino DeShields' daughter, and then he was managing the AAA team there after he sent her to Tennessee.
Wow.
Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com here on the program. Josh says, TD, what do you think about this? I'm expecting the Titans to start slowly, maybe 1-3 at the bye, but get better as the season progresses to finish up 8-9 or 9-8.
Yeah, I think the offense is going to start slowly and gradually work its way, and they're going to be carried by the defense. I think the defense is going to hit the ground running. So I'm not in a opposition to that text.
Is it crazy that I don't want to say that like, hey, that might be best case scenario, but the Lions had a season like that 2 years ago where they were terrible. And then they started to slowly figure it out. And then St. Brown became the man on offense. And, Jared Goff got back into more of a rhythm. And then that is what I feel like might be best case scenario for this team, is that by the end of the year, they're nothing like they are at the beginning of the year.
I think that is what you're going to see because it's a brand new scheme, brand new program. So it wouldn't surprise me if they're much better at the end than now.
One texter says, TD, how do you view the tight end position with the Titans? Who's the starter? Who's the backup? And does David Martin Robinson make the team?
DMR makes the team, I believe. I thought it was interesting. You see, he and Thomas Odukoya, like they're pretty close, but these guys are getting some of the more significant reps. Chig hasn't been a huge factor. And, there aren't many. I mean, I was pushing Chig before he even got drafted by this team.
Yep. Chig and Jelani Woods were your guys.
Exactly. Chig, so far, I will admit, has been a disappointment where you want to see more out of him. Josh Wiley has just been hurt. Like, it is what it is. And now I will say this about Josh Wiley, too. He chirps selectively. Like there's times where you'll hear him in the beginning of the period, and then by the end is this.
Dead silence.
Nothing. So we'll see. But I think David Martin Robinson, the thing about him that surprised everybody is how he blocks. But he's 247 pounds with a job to earn. So he's going to make those blocks, and they're starting to use him, coming in motion and blowing up the whoever is in the way and running off of it. You're seeing those things. So, yeah, I think they keep 4 tight ends. Nick Vanette had a heavy day of work on Wednesday, but I think David Martin Robinson is going to get more snaps and a bigger role than people may think.
I think David Martin Robinson might end up being the best tight end on this team. That that I don't think much of Chig, and with Wiley just can't stay healthy. He didn't stay healthy in college. He couldn't last year. He couldn't stay healthy, and now he's hurt this year. It's like
2 concussions in less than a year. That is something to watch.
The concussion thing with injury proneness kind of bothers. Like,
I'm not saying he's injury prone because of the concussions.
I'm
just saying is you want to be careful to not develop a history of those.
But it's like with Burks, it's like Burks is always injured, but half the time it's a concussion that he's injured with, and it's not like people try to get concussions and
I will say this thing with Burks, he has landed because after Callahan said it, I thought about it. I'm like, dang, he's right. It's been the same leg every time. And that's one thing that I remember in camp. Like you have those nagging injuries, right? And it just over and over again when it happens, it's just how it is. Like for me, it's always groin. It was always groin. You know what I mean? And it wasn't that I was prone to injuring my groin. It's just I kept hitting it just the same way every time, so.
One texter says, TD, should we buy stock in Jalen Harrell, or is he just a training camp preseason standout the way Rashad Weaver was a couple of years ago?
I don't know about buying stock in him. If you could buy low, sure, but I wouldn't buy it like premium pricing. I'll put it that way. What you're seeing is good things. Like he's shown flashes. He doesn't impress everybody. Like ask Trevor about him. Trevor will tell you he doesn't see the buzz. I think there's more that he could do, but to get a 7th round pick, making a name for himself that way is good. He'll be in the rotation. He's let's see.
My thing was, it sounded like he's out there with Simmons and Sweat and
was.
those guys.
He
I mean,
was.
they don't put those guys out there with you if they don't think that you're going to be a part of this.
What did I say about the first team offense, the drive?
Yeah, it was Harold that was the one that got in the backfield.
Now, initially they went 1s versus 2s, you know what I mean? The first team offense versus second team defense, and then vice versa. But then that last period, it was first team versus first team.
Let's go to Smokey Ben, who's up next here on the program. Ben,
Smokey
thank you for
Ben.
calling. Go ahead.
Appreciate it, guys. Yeah, TD, I mean, I think you do got to buy stock in Jalen Harrell. I mean, the linebacking core, Denard Wilson ain't scared to throw out young guys. I mean, this is his first go-round. He knows they're going to make mistakes, but by week 4 or week 6 at the latest, I want to see Chance Campbell and Jalen Harrell starting. I mean, as aggressive and as much run blitzing and pass blitzing as these guys are going to do, you don't got to think. See ball, get ball, play cat defense behind them. What do you think, TD?
I don't know that I start Harrell over Arden Key though, and I know Arden Key is a situational player, but I don't start Harrell over Arden Key. Campbell, like you're not going to get an argument from me about Campbell over Gibbons. I've been wanting to see him get some first team reps for a while.
But I don't think you could be C-ball, hit ball in Denard Wilson's defense.
Oh, I do.
Really? Because I think that they're going to have some exotic blitzes and they're going to.
Yeah, and in that exotic blitz, guess what your mission is to do? You see that right there? Go bust it.
Well, you can only do that with one person. I know the one person that I want them to do that with.
There's 2.
Adams.
Oh, yeah, you want Adams too.
Has Adams been practicing?
James Williams also, but he's not going to play much defense. But
So actually somebody texted in and said, TD, what happened to the kid we drafted out of Miami that was a safety? I heard they were debating on using him at linebacker. His film showed him as a head buster. I'm guessing that's James Williams.
Yeah, he's a linebacker, and in this he's played linebacker.
Do you think he is a lock to make the team?
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's
going to be hairy. What do you do with Cedric Gray? Like, is that shoulder injury significant enough to where it will cost him the year, right? Because at this point, the IR him. That's what it's.
Well, I heard somebody ask Brian Callahan a question today about the IR rules. Maybe I missed this. Did they change it where you can go on IR for the initial 53 and then be brought back later?
And that's the whole thing. I thought it was the case, but I was corrected by someone. So I don't know. But
they're not going to use a return spot on Caleb Cedric Gray.
Regardless, you have him, and then what do you do with Otis Reese, right? So you got Kenneth Murray, Gibbons, Campbell, Otis Reese, James Williams, Cedric Gray. You can't keep 6.
No.
Especially with how much sub package they're going to be in. So what do you do?
Can they pull the Des Fitzpatrick with Cedric Gray?
That would be awfully tough.
I mean,
they traded up to get Fitzpatrick too. I think I don't know.
And drafted him ahead of Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if you could pull it. That'd be close.
I was talking to somebody over the weekend, and I said that Amon-Ra St. Brown is like the one guy, the parents that just train their kids and then their kids end up resenting their parents and hating the sport and all that. That's like 99.9%. Amon-Ra St. Brown is the 0.1% where it's like, all right, Dad, I'm ready for 2 a.m. workouts.
Yeah. Like they put him through. Well, and also he landed in the perfect spot. They give him that total freedom in the slot. It fits what he does ideally.
One texter says, I'm sure Jared will love this, but according to Pro Football Focus, Andre Dillard is currently the top-rated tackle in the NFL.
Next question.
One texter says, TD, if this team collapses, do you see any potential drama with unhappy veteran wide receivers?
I'm curious about Ridley. I'm curious how he would react to adverse situations. I'm not saying that he's going to react negatively. I just want to see how he reacts to it.
The thing about the negative situation, I think DeAndre showed us last year what he's going to be like. If
he's going to be good,
well, he'll be fine.
DeAndre's going to be good.
I think that Tyler Boyd that year before Joe Burrow got there, that team was terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's taken his lumps. The point you make about Ridley is if things don't go well, with Ridley making the money that he's making, he's going to hear it. And he said he hears everything.
Well, he did you hear the conversation that we had?
Yeah, the one about the getting off the press.
No. He said his money's guaranteed.
Oh, he said that?
Yeah.
When did he say that?
Yesterday. I was asking him about pressure. He said he doesn't feel pressure. He says his money's guaranteed, but what drives him to succeed is providing for his family, which I respect 100%.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
I mean, there are some dudes in sports who, as much as we talk about the love of the game, some of these dudes are doing it because it's a job, and some of them are pretty good at it.
Mm-hmm. So for IR, teams get 8 returns from IR. This year, the teams can use 2 of those 8 at cut down day that won't count on the 53.
You're not using that on Cedric Gray. I mean, they don't really have anybody hurt right now that would go on IR. I don't think. But I can't imagine that they would use that. One of those 2 on Cedric Gray. I mean, I haven't even noticed the guy.
One of 8.
I don't even know what number he wears. I haven't even noticed him at all.
Yeah, 51. He's one of those ones that.
That's not a good Titans number.
Come on, man. Will Compton. David Long.
David Long was good.
Yeah, but no, he's one of those ones that, I figured actually what has happened with Jaquan Jackson is what I figured would happen with Cedric Gray. And I don't know, did you hear you were going, but D-May said Jaquan reminds him of himself.
Really?
Yeah. And so
Ooh.
I went to Jaquan and I was like,
the best wide receiver in the history of the Tennessee Titans.
He heard of him, but he wasn't as familiar. I was like, yeah, that's this organization's best receiver ever. And he was like, yeah. And I said, yeah, he said that you remind him of himself. And so Jaquan watched the tape yesterday that I sent him. And he talked about it today. He said, man, that dude was a beast. He was like, man, he was a monster returner, really good. He said about how he would always make the catch or make the play and get outside and do a dance after he scored and stuff like that. He watched him. Let
me tell you this about Derek Mason. Derek Mason, I've known him now for almost a decade. Really nice guy, really positive outlook on almost everything.
Mm-hmm.
But when he played,
dog,
he didn't care who you were. He
certified K9.
I mean, he was almost. I wonder if he was a little crazy when he played.
You gotta be certified K9. And the thing I love is he was doing one or two things after scoring. He's either pointing to the crowd like this, or he was throwing the ball at the wall. One of the two.
Yeah,
I loved it, man. I loved it.
And Chris, God bless him. I don't think Chris was that kind of like crazy in between the white lines kind of guy.
Chris was just, you ain't gonna catch me.
Yeah, he just ran deep.
He just ran deep. He get on his knees, hands in the air, and look into the sky.
Just told Chris Chandler, throw it as far as you can throw it, I'll go catch it. See, that's the kind of guy Levis needs.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm going to throw it as far as I can, and you're just going to go out and go run and get it. And
Xavier Worthy type.
Who knows? TD, as always, great stuff. We appreciate it. One more preseason game to go and one more power hour to go until we get to week 1. So close.
So
almost
close,
here.
but so far.
So speaking of TD, his buddies at ESPN.com ranked the coaching staffs. Where did they rank the Titans? We will discuss that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. So ESPN.com, I know. You thought that ESPN.com says, well, what do we make of this? And who do we? ESPN.com has ranked the coaching staffs in the NFL. Who has the best coaching staff, who has the worst coaching staff, and so on and so forth. And this is Benjamin Solak at ESPN. And he breaks down, how he came up with the rankings. And honestly, it's like a textbook trying to read out all these teams that he ends up ranking. Hey, in-game decision-making matters, and I didn't take special teams into consideration, nor any positional coaches, save for a few key exceptions. It's like, well, if we're ranking the coaching staffs, then assistant coaches matter. But again, this is ESPN's list, and you can make of it what you want. The Titans do not have the worst coaching staff in the NFL. That belongs to the Las Vegas Raiders. Which, by the way, they got Luke Steckel on their coaching staff. I like Luke Steckel. But the Raiders are 32nd with Antonio Pierce. So I was like, okay, do I click Tennessee to see where the Titans are, or do I just scroll down from 32? Because it's not going to be that far down the list. It is not. The Tennessee Titans are 28th on the list, according to ESPN.com. Only New Orleans, New England, Washington, and Vegas, according to ESPN.com, are worse than the Titans. I don't know how the Chicago Bears could be ahead of the Titans coaching staff-wise, because I think they should have fired that bozo coach they have, but they are. If I had to pick between what I don't know of Brian Callahan and what I do know of Mike McCarthy, I think I would take Brian Callahan. But here's kind of what they wrote, talking about the Titans coaching staff. Quote, high on the list of nerdy fascinations I have entering this season is the offense Brian Callahan will run in Tennessee. Callahan, who got a lot of shine as the Sherpa of the Bengals offense as they turned Joe Burrow into Peyton Manning, likes a spread out offense with quick decisions and even quicker releases. In his career under Callahan, Burrow averaged 7.4 air yards per attempt with his time to throw of 2.74 seconds. Last season, Will Levis led the league in 10.3 air yards per attempt with a time to throw of 2.9 seconds. Okay. Then he brings up Denard Wilson, saying, quote, this defense is a different matter. Wilson is one of 3 new defensive coordinators from the Mike McDonald tree, and I don't really have any reason to believe in any one over the other. But his secondary background should shine where they have L'Jarius Sneed, Chidobe Awuzie, Jamal Adams, and Quandre Diggs, joining a room already featuring a couple of exciting young players in Amani Hooker, Elijah Molden, and Roger McCreary. Put a star by that last name. By the way, if you're breaking down the Titans and you mention Elijah Molden as an exciting young player, at that point, I'm not sure I'm really all that interested in what you have to say. It should be noted, L'Jarius Sneed was drafted a year ahead of Elijah Molden. Not sure he counts as a young, exciting player anymore. And Amani Hooker was drafted in 2019. Young player. The front 7 deficiencies beyond Jeffrey Simmons are tough to ignore, but Wilson should be able to run some of those crazy Baltimore coverages with his back end. So what this tells me is this guy for ESPN.com, and you know me, if I think the Titans deserve being crapped on, I will do the crapping. But ESPN.com, this guy just basically looked at the coordinators and said, okay, what do we think of this guy? Well, he comes from Baltimore, so he's going to do Baltimore things. Oh, yeah. Outside of Jeffrey Simmons, they don't have anybody in the front 7. I'm sorry. Harold Landry's a 10-sack-a-year guy. But we don't count him. The truth of this is we don't really know how good the coaching staff is. I saw the Titans president, Berg Nihil, the real president, not this fake Chad Brinker kind of president, the actual president of the team. I saw he went on across the street and said, we know we crushed our Brian Callahan hire. No, you don't. Just like this bozo at ESPN doesn't know that they're 28th. We don't know. But what I find disappointing about this, there's no mention of Bill Callahan. Like, if we're breaking down the Titans coaching staff, isn't Bill Callahan like a pretty big deal?
Big coach.
He just won the Dr. Z award. I saw him talking about it today. And when you win any award named after the late Dr. Z, that's got to be pretty big. So let's take this with a grain of salt. And here's why we should take all this stuff with a grain of salt right now when it comes to the Titans, good or bad. We just don't know yet. We don't know if Brian Callahan is a good coach. Subsequently, we also don't know if he's a bad coach. And if you say he's the 28th best coach in the league, you're saying he's a bad coach. And I don't know that yet. For instance, Dave Canales in Carolina is 27, one spot ahead of the Titans. Who is the offensive line coach in Carolina? It's Joe Gilbert, who comes from Tampa Bay, which I guess there's not really a surprise there, given the fact that Canales was running the offense in Tampa Bay, and so he probably brought some Tampa Bay coaches over because whoever Tampa Bay hired, I think it was Liam Cohen, he probably wants to bring some of his own guys too. But if we're ranking these coaches, is Bill Callahan not as good as Joe Gilbert? The guy that is the defensive coordinator for the Panthers, again, one spot ahead of the Titans, the guy who's the defensive coordinator is that guy that was in Minnesota and then Denver, the Avero, what's his name? Everyone's like, oh, he's going to be a future head coach. And then his defenses weren't worth the crap and Sean Payton fired him. So is that better than Denard Wilson? We don't know if Denard Wilson's any good or not. So what happens is this guy at ESPN's tasked with, hey, write a story people will click on and put as little work in as possible. So he's looking at it saying, well, Dave Canales in Tampa took Baker Mayfield, who wasn't very good, and made him look better, whereas Brian Callahan didn't call any plays in Cincinnati, and Joe Burrow's good anyways, so let me put Dave Canales ahead of Brian Callahan. So once again, we don't know. We don't know about Brian Callahan. We don't know about Denard Wilson. And neither does anybody else. Is there a way that there are little things that can make you look at a guy and say, you know what, that's a pretty good coach right there? Sure. And can Brian Callahan exhibit some of these? Sure. But to act like he's 28th, or again, like the CEO of the Titans is claiming that, oh, we killed it by hiring him, we don't know. But to put together a list breaking down coaching staffs and to not include Bill Callahan, you have got to be kidding me. And that's not even getting into some of these other coaches that have a lot of experience, like Tracy Rocker and Frank Bush and Steve Jackson, etc. So it makes it hard for me to take that list seriously, or the idea that the coaching staff is not up to snuff. We don't know. And by the way, let me say this. I can guarantee you, if Mike Vrabel was still the coach of the Titans, that they would be much higher on this list. Who would you rather have? What you don't know about Denard Wilson or what you do know about Shane Bowen? What would you rather have? What we know about Bill Callahan or Humpty Dumpty, who was coaching the offensive line last year? It's probably rude of me to say. Probably should have said that. Jason Hoteling. And you know the answer to that. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 here on the program. We'll get your phones in on this. Speaking of Denard Wilson, there is one thing I was thinking about today that is actually a really big deal. Like a very big deal with Denard Wilson. And when you talk to people who are even optimistic about what he can bring to the table, they never bring it up. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
with Quandre coming in late, with Jarius on a management plan, Cheeto been hurt a little bit. How do you ensure that when the time comes for the regular season that the timing, the technique, and the communication will all be there?
The one thing about all those gentlemen that you just talked about, they're all professionals, and they've done it at a high level. They do a lot of talking in meeting rooms. Obviously, when we go out there and do walkthroughs, all of them are out there on the field. We'll get them all on the field together before we line up and play the first game. But I like where they at. All of them are pros, and we'll be just fine.
That was Denard Wilson talking yesterday. He's got his work cut out for him as they bring those guys back. So again, the Titans at ESPN.com ranked 28th in terms of their coaching staff, according to Benjamin Solak. Somebody asked me where the Giants was Shane Bowen, 24th. So it's not like they wrote high marks for Shane Bowen. If they did, I might have a heart attack on this program. Knock on wood. So I have a Denard Wilson question, and I don't know the answer to this. The answer might be yes. The answer might be no. I don't know. But a lot of people, because he's the secondary coach, or he's not the secondary coach of the Titans, but he is a secondary coach coming via the Ravens last year, want to talk about the secondary, including that Benjamin Solak article where it was like they could do some Ravens-like coverage things with the guys they have in the secondary, which is in theory true, but that's not exactly what I want out of the Titans defense. I want the Titans defense to model the Ravens for their pass rush. Because when you hire a guy from a successful team, the real reason you do that is because you want a little of that secret sauce. When Georgia went to hire Kirby Smart, they wanted a little of Nick Saban's secret sauce. They got it. When Tennessee wanted a little bit of Nick Saban's secret sauce, they hired Jeremy Pruitt, and they didn't get that secret sauce and ended up losing 34-7 at home to Kentucky. So when it comes to adding Denard Wilson, yeah, I'm sure some of this goes back to that Jeff Fisher background that he's got, the Greg Williams, the Jim Schwartz, the kind of the root of the Titans. But I also think some of it has to do with the fact that you want a little bit of that Ravens secret sauce. And that Ravens defense was impressive. But I want my defense to get after the quarterback the way the Ravens defense gets after the quarterback. When we think of the best defensive linemen, interior D linemen in the NFL, we're probably all thinking of the same guys, right? Ian, give me 4 guys right now. Now, you've looked at the grid, so you know where I'm going with this. But give me 4 guys, if I were to say, give me the best interior D lineman in the league. Go.
Right now?
Yeah.
Dexter Lawrence, Quinnen Williams, Jeffrey Simmons, Chris Jones. I'm probably missing 1 or 2 in there.
Well, you gave me 4, but that's good. How many people would bring up Justin Matabike?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Justin Matabike had 13 sacks last year out of nowhere. And Matabike is a good player, but he's not Chris Jones. And I believe they got Matabike in like the 3rd or 4th round. But that's the Ravens. The Ravens, when it comes to these pass rushers, they've got a little bit of that secret sauce. And I think the proof is truly in the pudding. When you look last year at 2 guys they had that we know what they are. We know what Jadeveon Clowney is. He had 9.5 sacks for the Ravens last year. 9.5. Clowney, which would be 9.5 more than he had when he was here. What a bomb that was, by the way. And I tried to tell you guys, went on the Corey Curtis show and said it on the news the day they signed him, and people got mad because they were stuck at their homes during COVID, and they were like, no, Jared, no, he's going to be great. Uh-huh. Kyle Van Noy was also on the Ravens last year. And again, we know what Van Noy is. Van Noy is a journeyman linebacker who is a 4 to 5 sack a year guy. He had 9. That's what the Ravens do. Because again, we know how good Jadeveon Clowney and Kyle Van Noy are. So when I think about Denard Wilson, and yes, I know at heart, Denard Wilson is a secondary coach. And so we think that means, okay, this is going to be about the secondary. And that with Snead and Awuzie and Adams and Hooker and Quandre Diggs, it's like, well, of course they better have a great secondary and they better lock it up. And the Ravens with Geno Stone and Marcus Williams and Kyle Hamilton and those guys, it's like, can we get what they had? I want what the Ravens have at pass rush. And TD just texted me in all caps, Chuck Smith, because I was talking to TD about this during a break last hour. And he says, Chuck Smith with the Ravens, he's their pass rushing coach. He's their guru as far as that's concerned. Well, can Denard Wilson bottle up some of what he saw from Chuck Smith, the guru, and bring that over here? Can the guys they have? They got this guy, Ben Bloom, who's I've never heard of until now, but I read his bio on the Titans website, and it was like Ben Bloom was coaching the Dallas Cowboys with Micah Parsons. And before that, he was coaching DeMarcus Ware. And it's like, okay, can you give me a little of that juice? Because that juice could totally change the outlook of the Titans. Jim Washburn, when he was the defensive line coach with Greg Williams and with Jim Schwartz, he made a difference. Now, was Javon Curse good and Albert Hainsworth good and Kevin Carter good? And were they? Yeah, they were good. But he made a difference. So when it comes to the Titans and the pass rush, I'm like, can Denard Wilson and his coaches, but can Denard Wilson take a 6-sack guy in Arden Key, and can they turn him into a 10-sack guy this year? We're already banking, and I say they're already banking that they can take Kenneth Murray, who for whatever reason wasn't what the Chargers wanted when they drafted him in the first round, and can they make Kenneth Murray into this wrecking ball type player who also affects the quarterback with the pass rush? Can you take Kenneth Murray, and I have no idea how many sacks Kenneth Murray had last year, but my guess is he's probably a 1-2 sack a year guy. Can you make him a 6-sack guy? Just like the Ravens do with Clowney and Van Noy and Patrick Queen and all these guys that they have that are in the front 7.
3 sacks last year for Kenneth Murray.
3 sacks. Can you take him to 7? Can you get him to 7? What about a 10-sack guy like Landry? Can you get him into the 13-14 range? Can they make Jeffrey Simmons the best defensive tackle in the league? That's what I'm more worried about, because I have always believed. Now, look, I don't think you could just put Trey Avery out there at corner and say, all right, let's go win the Super Bowl. But I believe that the pass rush is what makes or breaks the secondary. So everybody else, including this Benjamin Solak article, everybody else with Denard Wilson is going to look at this and say, can the Titans secondary be like the Ravens secondary? But that's not my question. My question is, can the Titans pass rush be like the Ravens pass rush? Again, think about Matabikwe and what he was, and I believe he came out of Texas too.
The A&M maybe?
Was he A&M?
Yeah, I think it said A&M. Third round, 71st overall for Matabikwe.
Okay.
And it was A&M, yep.
Well, what if the Titans found a way to have that same effect on Tavondre Sweat? That's what I'm talking about. That's what's going to be, again, if you want this to be a top 5 defense, which I heard today, again, D-Mace taken out of context, thinks it could be a top 5 secondary, not top 5 defense. Somebody interpreted it as a top 5 defense. Then I falsely accused Joe of being the one who said it, because I felt like that might have been something that Joe might have said.
And Joe got mad.
And honestly, Joe probably did have a right to be upset about that. We always say on this program, you have to be fair. Joe didn't say that. And so me assuming that he did was probably poor on my behalf. But that's what I want. I want the Ravens pass rush. Can you give me that? Again, I know. When you come from a team, it's, no, I'm not trying to be Nick Saban. I am trying to be Jared Stillman. Well, they hired you because they want you to be Nick Saban. That's why. So when I hire a coach from the Ravens, it's because I want the Ravens. And what I want from the Ravens, it's all like the same stuff with the Joe Burrow Cincinnati offense with the Titans. It's the same thing. They won with a terrible offensive line. Now you want Brian Callahan to do it again because his offensive line might not be very good. So I want the Ravens pass rush. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. There is one thing that Brian Callahan has said repeatedly, said it in OTAs, has said it in training camp, and it sounds good for Denard Wilson, but it better be. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game.
That first period of offense didn't end great except for the penalty that set you up for the field goal.
Yeah.
The 2-minute period didn't end well.
No.
What did you think of those two?
Not what we're looking for. Obviously, you'd like to find yourself in position to go score points in a 2-minute drill. Our defense, when they want to pin their ears back and rush, is hard to block. Our front's good. They've proven challenging for us. So, yeah, I mean, we'd certainly like to see better than what we saw today, but that's the ebbs and flows of camp. We've had some good drives, and we've had some ones that went the defense's way. So, as the head coach, I get to be excited that the defense played well because they did. But, yeah, I'd like to have gotten more from that, I think.
That was Brian Callahan today. Again, the 2-minute drill was not good, just like it wasn't good last week. And I got to tell you something Brian Callahan keeps saying that's starting to drive me a little crazy. And he did this in OTAs, and has done this throughout training camp. And he did this today, and he even kind of did it with the Seahawks last week, which was this whole, well, hey, the defense is pretty good whenever he's having to answer for why the offense hasn't been good. And I'm kind of getting tired of that. I'm kind of getting tired of, hey, the offense sucked today, coach. Why did it? Well, hey, our defense is really good. And I'm getting tired of it because I know in my heart that the Titans defense isn't going to be that good. It's going to be okay. It's not going to be that good, or at least I truly, truly believe that. I think they probably have an average defense. So let me just say this. Brian Callahan better hope that he's right, and that's the case, that no, the reason why the offense is stinking it up is because the defense is really, really, really good. Because if that's the case, then his offense is probably average, but his offense is average with a really, really, really good defense. What is more likely, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news here, but what is probably more likely is that it is like last year where the Titans defense dominated the offense. Christian Fulton said, I've never been in a training camp where we've dominated the offense like this. Kevin Byard said, we think we can be the best defense in the league. And 6 weeks later, Kevin Byard was gone because they weren't. It was bad offense. That is what I am worried about. Because even though the offense is going to be a work in progress, Brian Callahan gets up at the podium after week 1 and says, well, you know, Chicago has really, really good defense. Nobody's going to hear that. And he knows the name of the game is not everybody's got good players, but don't give me this, you know, crazy every day. Hey, you know, Denard's defense pretty good. It better be, or else it's your offense sucks. And if your offense sucks and you're a quarterback guru, we're not going to like that very much. But he's been saying this since OTAs. You know, the 7-on-7 and OTAs 1 week, Levis had a terrible day. And he was like, well, you know, you got to give Denard's defense credit. That's why we went out and got Denard, because I didn't like playing against the Ravens. And so it's good defense. Then in training camp, well, you know, it's good defense. Then against Seattle last week, oh, you know, it's good defense. Today, well, it's good defense. I hope you're right. One texter says Brian Callahan hasn't been a head coach before. How can ESPN.com give him a grade? I understand what you're saying, but again, you have to rank these guys some way, somehow. For me, with Brian Callahan, what I'd give him credit for, if I were to sit here and tell you, you know, again, and you're right, it's how do you rank Dave Canales versus Brian Callahan versus who's another first-year head coach this year that, you know, is a
McDonald,
Mike
Seattle.
McDonald. Like, how do you rank those guys ahead of one another? I get it. But Brian Callahan's done a couple of things that I really, really like. Now, he's done a couple of things I really don't like. You know, not playing Raiden some PT in the preseason game last week, I did not like. But number one, he's hired an experienced coaching staff. Now, his coordinators are not overly experienced, but Bill Callahan has experience. Frank Bush has experience. Tracy Rocker has experience. You know, a lot of these, Tyke Tolbert has experience. A lot of these guys have experience, which I think is pretty good. The other thing with Brian Callahan that I feel good about is his own experience. He's not just some one-trick pony who's riding Joe Burrow's coattails. He's coached other places. That I like. And I like what they did with Jake Browning last year in Cincinnati. He has to get a little credit for that. One texter says, Andrew says, the offense should truly be twice as good as the defense, considering the defense is going out there without the starting corners. You know, that's something we haven't really thought about. They can't sack the quarterback, and Snead and Awuzie haven't practiced, and the defense is still dominating. That is not a good sign. That is not a good sign at all. Whew. One texter says 9.5 sacks last year. Good Lord. I think talking about Jadeveon Clowney. 9.5 sacks. If you can just think about it like this. And I know that this is not how this works, but in theory, if Jadeveon Clowney was a 0 sack guy under Mike Vrabel and Shane Bowen, and he's a 9.5 sack guy with the Ravens, and Denard Wilson brings over a little bit of that secret sauce from the Ravens, what's that do for a 6-sack guy who's a harder worker in Arden Key? Could that make Arden Key like a 12-sack guy? And I know that that's crazy to think that it would even be theoretically possible that you could get those kind of sacks.
That would be double his production.
But again, who would have thought 9.5 for Clowney?
What about Simmons? Does he need to hit double digits this year?
Simmons got to get into double digits. You know, he's never been in double digits in his career, and I think that needs to change for once. One texter says, Jared, the defense is going to have tons of turnovers because of Denard Wilson. He's led the league 2 years in a row. So are you saying that Denard Wilson is the reason why the Eagles and the Ravens were getting those turnovers? I'd argue that the reason why, again, goes back to the pass rush. The Ravens get after the quarterback. The Eagles 2 years ago, with Hassan Reddick as one of the best defensive linemen in the NFL, and they were a nightmare for those quarterbacks. That's how San Francisco lost both of them in the NFC title game, because the Eagles just got after them. Remember when you played the Eagles, the game that AJ spanked the goalpost? Do you remember just how dominating they were up front? Got everybody hurt. Tannehill got hurt. Nate Davis got hurt. Like a lot of guys got, because the Eagles were so good. So again, give me a little of that secret sauce and put it on my front seven. And then I'll say, if it's what happens, I'll say Brian Callahan's right, because Brian Callahan complains after they get swamped in practice that, hey, you know, Denard's defense is pretty good. I'll give it a little credit there. One texter says, if the Bears win week 1, you have to talk about how great the Bears are the following Monday for a half hour at minimum, and apologize for calling Eberflus a bozo on air. Deal. No, I'm not making that deal. I think Eberflus is a dope. I do not understand.
You didn't like the Caleb Williams rollout to his left, drop it in the bucket to a Dunze this past weekend?
Was that coached?
I don't know.
Okay. Here's what I don't like. What I don't like is what the Bears have now done for each of their last 2 drafted in the first round quarterbacks, and they're doing it for the 3rd in a row. And this has to go to the old Meemaw that runs the team over there. Like, she has to be the one that we blame for this. But the Bears drafted Mitch Trubisky with the 2nd overall pick, with John Fox, who I believe is a defensive coach, with John Fox as the head coach. So they have a defensive coach and the guy's on the hot seat, and they draft a quarterback. What if Floyd used to always say was going to happen if you try to play a rookie quarterback?
You're going to lose.
That's what he said. And I know Ben Roethlisberger went 15-0 as a rookie or whatever, but you're going to lose. So the Bears did that and fired John Fox. So then in comes Matt Nagy, and Matt Nagy has a quarterback he didn't draft who's already spent a year under another coaching staff. So then after 3 years of that, now Matt Nagy's on the hot seat because Trubisky's a bum, and whether or not Trubisky's a bum because he's a bum or whether or not he's a bum because he was set up to fail, I don't know. But so now Matt Nagy's on the hot seat, and Matt Nagy and his group draft Justin Fields. And so they're on the hot seat. They want to start Andy Dalton because they don't think Fields is ready. Everybody gets mad and demands they play Fields. They don't want to get fired, so they play Fields. They lose. He gets fired. So now in comes Caleb Williams. Now in comes Matt Eberflus, and Justin Fields is the quarterback. And so now it has to work. It doesn't work. They get rid of the quarterback. They now draft a new quarterback, and he's got a coaching staff who, if they don't win this year, they're going to fire. Start from scratch. That's the kind of team that should have Brian Callahan as their coach. It should be Chicago. They should have said, hey, we really want to go. In fact, and I know they would never do this, that's the team that should have hired Matt Nagy to be the coach, Because if you can win with Trubisky and you're drafting a guy who's got Mahomes' skill set, take the guy who's coaching Mahomes right now and go put him in there. But they can't do it because they already hired him.
That would have been wild, huh? Rehire Nagy.
They would, where they would have done it? Hockey.
Maybe.
They rehire the coach. Barry Trotz. They rehire the coach all the time in the
here's
NHL.
GM, not as coach.
I know, but again, you still rehire. You fired him 10 years ago.
Matt Nagy back as
brought him back because you know what? It makes sense. Let's bring him back. I don't know why we can do it in hockey. We can't do it in football. I don't know. I don't know why we can do that. But that's where they would have done. One texter says, what does it say about Denard Wilson that his defense is running Trey Avery out there against the Titans first? Holy crap, you guys can be haters sometimes. I'm the one.
Once the season starts, hopefully Trey Avery will get back to his roster position.
I'm the one who, you mean at the very, very bottom?
Something like that. Get his proper spot in the depth chart. I'm
the one who's always dumping on Trey Avery, but oof. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 here on the program. By the way, there was something that happened today at Titans practice, or I should say after practice. Something that happened that warmed my heart. We'll get to it on your phones. We'll do it next. 615-737-1025. Let's talk Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Those are my guys. They take great care of my home. I've been telling you that for years. And apparently it works because Ian has booked Hiller for his home.
Bring it on.
By the way, thank you for co-signing on something that's not, your spot, but I appreciate you doing that. Ian's got Hiller coming out to the house this week. He knows what's up. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, they're the best. And because summer's over, it's time to get ready for school to start. Let Hiller take care of the home work. This month, enjoy back-to-school savings with offers like a $99 drain cleaning, $500 off select high-efficiency HVAC systems, $500 off a new tankless water heater, and $1,000 off a whole home generator. That's right. What drew you to Hiller, Ian? What made you say, hey, I got to call these guys out to my home?
Oh, I need the $99 drain cleaning special.
Ding, ding, ding. Way to go. Visit happyhiller.com for details. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller. Call the Happy Face truck today.
Very proud to present this to you on behalf of the PFWA, and congratulations, very well deserved. When they call somebody an O-line guru, your name's right there.
I appreciate that, Tracy. Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
That's really awesome. How cool is that? Thank you so much. First off, I want to thank the Pro Football Writers of America for the award. And obviously, after Dr. Z, I'm a huge fan of Dr. Z. You know, in the early 80s, when I was a college coach, and I always wanted to coach in the NFL and be a pro coach, this is the guy that I look to and look forward to about reading about the NFL, because at that time there was no real internet with a lot of information about the pro game. So this was my insight. This was my kind of my conduit into pro football, was through Dr. Z. And yeah, I couldn't wait for each Friday's Sports Illustrated issue to come out and to read his predictions and his thoughts on the week and on the league. And, you know, the book that he wrote, yeah, it's just really cool. I still have it. You know, it's the Thinking Guide to the NFL, and it was such a great book, and it gave me such great insight into the nuances and the technicalities of the game. That shoot, I mean, every coach would love reading it. So this is such an awesome award, and very proud to represent Dr. Z and also the players and the coaches that I've been affiliated with. So this wouldn't happen without some of the great coaches and some of the great players that I've been around. So thank you.
Congratulations to Bill Callahan. I did not know that the Pro Football Writers Association of America had a Lifetime Achievement Award, and I did not know that it was named after the late Dr. Z, Paul Zimmerman, forever of Sports Illustrated. And so when I was watching the press conference today and I saw Bill Callahan up there, because the Titans are very against Bill Callahan at the podium, even though everybody cares what Bill Callahan has to say because we're all scared to death that the offensive line is going to stink. And when they make the assistant coaches available, Bill has to be treated like all the other assistant coaches where everybody's got to stand around
Well, you
him.
think he gets special privileges or special conditions?
He should be. He's the Dr. Z Award winner. Let me know when they give somebody else the Lifetime Achievement Award.
Okay, I'll keep an eye out.
Like the guy on the coaching staff that looks like Jonah Hill. When he wins the award, let's put him at the podium. Not to accept the award, but to talk about the whatever it is he coaches. But I say this because I clicked it. You know, I saw Bill Callahan up there. I was like, what the hell is Bill Callahan up there doing? So I clicked it and I saw Bill Callahan was, you know, taking the, you know, was accepting the Dr. Z award. And he was talking about how much he loves Dr. Z, what you just heard in that cut right there. When I was a kid, Dr. Z in Sports Illustrated for me was the gospel. And there were two specific times a year where I had to know what Dr. Z said. Preseason predictions. And I remember the year the Titans went to the Super Bowl, Dr. Z had them 8-8. And the NFL draft. And I read somewhere, I think this might have been in Peter King's column after Dr. Z passed away. But when ESPN first started running the NFL draft, that was kind of the first foray into the major professional sports that the ESPN had. ESPN was running taped college football games on their station. They couldn't get any sports rights. They couldn't get any NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball. They couldn't get any of that. It was all sucked up by the ABCs and the NBCs and the CBSs and whatnot. And so Chet Simmons, who was the president then at ESPN, went to Pete Rozelle and asked to show the draft, and they laughed and they were like, show the draft on TV? What are you talking about? And so when they started doing it, ESPN didn't have the football department to be able to have analysts on the draft. And so they put Dr. Z on the draft. And Dr. Z was the guru of the draft. And he took his mock draft so seriously every year. It's like now, how seriously, and I know Mel takes it seriously, but like, I don't think Mel Kiper looks at his mock draft, puts one out there, a month before the draft and then expects to hit on like 10 picks. That's what Dr. Z used to do. And so it warmed my heart today to see that Bill Callahan won the Dr. Z award. Now, let's hope that billing, him being the guru and everything else, I'm just going to say, let's hope that he can do that, because right now this offensive line's a train wreck. Most notably at right guard and right tackle. But again, TD said Latham, today, had a tough day. I don't exactly remember exactly what TD said, but it was something like that. And so let's hope that Bill Callahan is all that in a bag of chips, because when it comes to this team winning some games, they're going to need that from the offensive line. One texter texted in the 2:00 hour and said he couldn't listen to the show anymore. He is still texting the show at 4:47 p.m. That's why when people say, I'm done listening to this show, I know it's a hollow threat. The people that don't listen to the show, those people just don't talk about the show. They don't text the show. They don't anything when it comes to the show. One texter says, have you ragged about the toxic positivity it was to bring Jelly Roll into the team meeting, or how toxic it was when Sweat sang with Jelly Roll and the team shouted boom every time Tavondre Sweat took a step? It's almost like they're a family. It's just so toxic, Jared. No, I haven't said anything like that, but let me say this. I'm a Jelly Roll fan now. Now, I played a celebrity softball game with Jelly Roll a couple years ago. I knew he was famous. I didn't know that, I didn't listen to his music. I mean, I kind of assumed that Jelly Roll was a musician, but you never know. And so I knew he was a musician, and I knew he was.
Did some stuff next door at the Buzz and was at our celebrity golf tournament last year, the year before.
And he was. And so, whatever. I like Jelly Roll, but I just really didn't know his music. But lately, I've been, because Jelly Roll is one of the very talented members on the Broken Bow Records label, I was like, oh my God, I got to listen to Jelly Roll. Or really, more importantly, I went to see a Mayfest the night the Jelly Roll played. And let me say this, that Jelly Roll's got some game now. Like, he's got some game. Like, he's good. And I think he's about all the right things, even though he did get charged with armed robbery. But I read some article he said that was something stupid. Well, duh. But I mean, I think this Jelly Roll, I think he's about all the right things. I like him. So no, I'm not going to go crazy about Jelly Roll showing up to the facility and singing with Tavondre Sweat. I will say this though. Now I'm going to hold back on what I was about to say. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. 615-737-1025. Coming up next, I was listening to Will Levis talk. And it kind of feels like the fans are hopeful that Will Levis will say that he hated playing for Mike Vrabel. But there was something new that I think fans got really excited about that I don't actually necessarily think is a good thing. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. So I know what Titan fans want. I am a Titan fan. I would say I do think sometimes maybe our feelings about the Titans are a little different, even though we all want them to win. But sometimes I know what Titan fans really want in their hearts for Christmas. I know not just what they would write on the list to Santa, that they would give their parents to give to Santa, but what they're really thinking in their heads they wish Santa would bring them. And when it comes to Will Levis, one thing I know Titan fans want, and Levis kind of walks the line a little bit on this when he's kind of gets put in a situation where he's asked about it. Titans fans want him to badmouth Mike Vrabel. Not the Mike Vrabel sucks and I hate him. They don't want that. They're not expecting that. But they want him to be asked about Brian Callahan, and they want him to be like, oh, thank God that I'm in this coaching with this coaching staff instead of last year's coaching staff. I don't know exactly what it is. I don't know exactly why it is they want him to throw shade at Vrabel, but they do. So Will Levis was talking yesterday, and this became a little bit of a thing on social media, about Will Levis and his audibles. I don't even know where this came from. Do we know where this came from? Where this whole, like, how much did you audible last year? How much did you audible in college? Where did that come from?
I'm not sure. Maybe someone's writing a story about it.
Maybe. So Levis was asked about audibling, how much he does it, how much he should do it, how much he did it last year. And here's what he said.
Well, did you have kind of freedom to make checks at the line of scrimmage last season or even at Kentucky that you do now?
A little bit. I mean, we would talk like, hey, if we get 0, this is our like menu of answers, or what you can get to this versus this. But I wasn't doing much in terms of like if I felt there was a pressure into the run, like getting something else up or what have you. But yeah, a little bit of last year, not much in college. Yeah.
Okay. So he's basically saying like, yeah, no, I didn't really have that freedom to audible. I didn't really do much of that. And again, because that's kind of a crack at the old coaching staff. It's like, yes. Oh, praise Jesus that we have the coaching staff to develop the young quarterback and give him the freedom with which he needs to play. And I want my quarterback to audible, and I want this, and I think this whole Will Levis audibling at the line of scrimmage thing is a total non-starter for me. I'm not saying don't make calls at the line. I'm not saying don't make checks. It happens. I get it. It's the game. But let me say this. Will Levis is not ready to do the kind of things that an experienced NFL quarterback has to do. Tom Brady talked about this over the summer. I heard him do an interview, and I found this to be incredibly fascinating, in which he said, you've got all your coaches, and you've got all the other teammates, and you've got the game plan, and you've got what they've gone over on the film and what they've told you to do, and you've got and as the quarterback, you're the last line of defense before the ball is snapped. Brady referenced, if we're calling a run to the left and they bring the safety down, it's my job to the left side. It's my job to check out of that play. And I understand that. And at some point, I will want Will Levis to manage all of that. But right now, that's not his job. That's not what he's ready to do. That's where Brian Callahan comes in. Now, I think Will Levis is smarter than Jared Goff, even if the reason why I'm not sold that Jared Goff's all that smart is because of the Hard Knocks thing where he didn't know that the sun rose in the east and set in the west. And maybe after that, I just thought, yep, he's a dope. But that's how I kind of feel about Jared Goff. Kind of a robot. But we all know the story about McVay and Goff, right? McVay shows up and he basically tells Goff what to do on every snap. So Goff goes to the line of scrimmage, and before the coach to quarterback communication system shuts off at 15 seconds, McVay's looking at the defense and he's telling Goff what to do. That's kind of what I want Brian Callahan to be able to do for Will Levis when the games come around. Because again, I don't think Levis is really ready to be able to diagnose the defense at this point in the career. So while it's great that Titan fans are like, yeah, give Levis the freedom to run the offense. And those coaches were so stupid for not letting Levis be able to check out of plays and not this and that. I'm sure they let him check out some. But he doesn't really, at this point in his career, he hasn't earned the freedom to do his own thing. Levis needs to be protected. And I don't just mean he needs guys on the line of scrimmage in front of him blocking the other guys, though he absolutely does need that. But he needs to be protected. He needs to be nurtured more than he needs to try to do things that most young quarterbacks in the NFL are not ready for. Maybe Joe Burrow was ready for those things by year 2 when they went to the Super Bowl and they were 10-7. The difference is Levis ain't Burrow. I listened to Ed Orgeron do a podcast with Colin Cowherd about a year ago. And Colin asked Ed Orgeron, how early did you know that Joe Burrow was the guy? Or something like that. And Ed Orgeron told a story in which he was like, well, when he came on his recruiting visit, he sat down with me and he said, I don't want to do the recruiting stuff. I just want to talk football and I want to eat crawfish. And I said, okay, that's what we're going to do. So we get in the meeting room and there's 5 of us in there. And it took about 10 minutes and everybody there knew who the smartest one in the room was. I don't think that's Levis. No disrespect to Levis. I don't think he can sit in the room with his college coaches and everybody in the room say, that dude's the smartest guy here. And Peyton, second-year quarterback. And again, I don't know what kind of freedoms Jim Morris Sr. gave Peyton at that point in his career, but I don't think Levis is Peyton either. I remember Bill Polian said this a couple months ago, where he said the most important thing Levis has to do now, first-year quarterback's job is to learn how to get the play call, get in and out of the huddle, and get the team in the right formation. That's the first-year quarterback's job. Second-year quarterback needs to be able to learn how to see the blitz, because if you don't, you're going to get killed. Floyd had something similar, where we talked about the first year, you're just trying to go out there and not get killed. The second year, you're trying to learn the offense. The third year, you're trying to learn what the defense is trying to do against you. Year 4 and 5, you need to have it mastered, and that's when you get a big contract. It wouldn't surprise me, by the way, if CJ Stroud doesn't know how to do some of these things. But he's got Bobby Slowick, a Kyle Shanahan guru, coaching him. And my guess is Bobby Slowick is on the horn until there are 15 seconds on that play clock telling CJ Stroud what to do. You think Kyle Shanahan, that he all of a sudden, when Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant as a rookie, gets thrust into the starting lineup because of an injury to Trey Lance and an injury to Jimmy G, you think that he's sitting there saying, all right, Brock, go ahead and change the play at the line of scrimmage if you want? No. So Will Levis has to earn the freedom to be able to make anything that's not a basic check. He's got to earn that from the coaching staff. Like, he's got to be ready to do it. You don't put a 9-year-old behind the wheel of a car, because you know what's going to happen if you do that. And far too often, I think some of these teams, they get it in their head that, no, this is the way the quarterback is supposed to be running the offense. And so they ask Bryce Young as a rookie to carry the team with no players on it, and it becomes a massive problem. So again, while I don't totally understand why a lot of you guys out there want to just have Will Levis say something that makes Vrabel and Tim Kelly and the old coaching staff look bad. I don't know why you hate Vrabel so much when you loved him so much when he was the coach. I don't know where that all comes from. But whatever it is, the idea of, yeah, this coaching staff is going to give Levis the freedom, I don't like that. Baby him. And when he proves to you that he's ready for more, give it to him. But right now, let's just try to have a little success early. And if telegraphing things for him up front is the way to do it, do it. That's how I feel. I don't want Levis to try to think he's got to go out there and run the team, because he's not ready for that, folks. He's got 9 career starts. He's not ready for that. You do that, you become Baker Mayfield in Cleveland, and it becomes a disaster. So again, this whole let's put Levis in charge. No, we're not doing that. We're not leaving the young quarterback at home alone because, he's 9 years old, so let's see what he can do. No. He's got to earn that. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025 here on the program. Plus, there's one thing that I think Will Levis probably does to himself that it is the coach's job to fix. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106 for the game.
He said he thought you'd audible by the end of the season about 20% of the time. Do you have an estimate for probably what you audibled last year?
I couldn't tell you right now, no. I don't know. I mean, by audible, I don't know exactly what he means, like with attached, cans or whatever, but.
He was talking about checking out, like you said, for trouble.
Yeah, it was probably less than that, probably.
That was Will Levis again being, last year, what'd you know? Oh, yeah, no, it was probably less than that. 20% of the time I changed the play. And I was like, yes, that's what's supposed to happen with a young quarterback. That's what's supposed to happen with a young quarterback. It's as simple as that. The coaches are supposed to manage the young quarterback. So there's one thing that I feel, and I fear a little bit when it comes to Will Levis. And that is, the guy who wants to be something that maybe they're not, but wants to be it so bad that they will do whatever it takes in order to be that. They want to prove it so bad. I remember that as a radio host. I remember sitting there thinking to myself, like, God, I want to be respected for my opinions. I want people to listen. I want people to care. I want people to, and now, well, again, this is why we do the job, is for people to listen to it. But sometimes it actually is kind of a headache. You say some things that rub people the wrong way, and then people get mad. And I know it happens all the time, but it doesn't mean that I like that it happens all the time. But when I was younger, if somebody, approached me in public and was like, man, I listen to your show, I was like, oh, yes, thank God. I just wanted to be that guy. And I think with Will Levis, I fear that he so badly wants to be a great quarterback that I think he probably puts too much on his plate than he's really ready for in the NFL. And so it's Brian Callahan's job, in my opinion, to make sure that he's progressing at the right rate and not overloading him before he's ready. Now, I think there's a fine line to all of this, because I think Brian Callahan wants to empower Will Levis with kind of that old adage, son, I believe in you. He's not going to come out and say, yeah, we've got to baby the young quarterback, because if we give him too much before he's ready, it's going to overload him, and it's going to fry the system, and then we got to start from scratch. But I do hope that that is what's happening here. That Brian Callahan is the kind of quarterback guru that I think that he should be, and that he's the one that's kind of telling Levis what to do when that time comes. Phone lines are by WilsonCountyHunter.com. 615-737-1025. One texter says Ryan Tannehill did not audible a lot either in Tim Kelly's offense. How do we know how much somebody audibles? Like, I don't understand that. How do the fans know how much somebody audibles?
I don't know. They always like to yell at can, the quarterbacks. But,
right, but they yell a lot of things.
So it's hard to know for sure.
They yell a lot of things. Plus, we don't hear everything that they yell on the field. Here's what I know. What I know is that when Tannehill took over as the quarterback, there was a noticeable difference. Now, again, this was with Arthur Smith and this was with Mariota. And I always believed that Mariota had been taught at a young age, son, you do what the coach tells you to do. If the coach tells you to eat dog crap, you eat dog crap. You understand, son? Yes, sir. So even though coaches, as quarterbacks grow up, they like, hey, Marcus, if you see this, we want you to check out of this. We want you to, hey, it's your responsibility. It's your name. It's your paycheck. It's your career. It's your team. We want you to do this. I just think Marcus was the kind of guy that if the coach tells him what to do, that's what he's going to do. Tannehill took over, and there was a lot of talk about, hey, Tannehill is checking out of the play. Now, remember John Gruden, after the Titans went to Oakland and just beat the crap out of the Raiders. John Gruden was talking about the Titans, and he's like, boy, I'll tell you, man, I don't know exactly what you're supposed to do. Yeah, you got that big beast over there in the backfield, and all of a sudden you load the box, stop him. Tannehill checks out of it and throws the ball down the field. I don't really know how you're supposed to beat that kind of team. I'll tell you, man, it's just awesome. So when you tell me Tannehill didn't check out a lot, I'm like, really? Tannehill didn't check out a lot? Because that's what he did with Arthur. And this idea that, oh, no, the Tim Kelly offense isn't designed for the quarterback to check out, bullcrap. Phil Simms, I can promise you, checked out of that offense. Tom Brady, I can promise you, was making checks out of that offense. I mean, it's like I said, Brady said, when you're the quarterback, you're the last line of defense. There was a play call against Seattle where number 10 for Seattle, I don't even know who that is. It was a play action in the low red zone in, I think it was team period. And Levis, before he could even fake the handoff, or as soon as he turned around from faking the handoff, turned around and number 10 was in his face. And I'm like, who was the I was like, who's responsible for that sack? And I think I was standing next to Gentry, and I turned to Gentry and I was like, I think that was like a play calling sack where Seattle had the right play called, the Titans had the wrong play called, and it was the perfect blitz at the right time that's the quarterback's job to get out of it. Not right now, because that's what Brian Callahan has to teach Levis, but big picture, like it's Matthew Stafford's job not to snap the ball into a box that's going to go nowhere. That's his job. He's the last line of defense. Sure, the coaches can spend all week saying, we're going to run this play. 888-98 Veer. We're going to run it. We're going to run it to death. And they get out there and it's like, oh no, I'm looking at this right now. We're not running that play. Check. We're running this play. I've told the story recently about Dan Marino and Aronde Gadsden and Jimmy Johnson, right? I've told that recently on the program.
I think maybe.
Where in the Dan Marino documentary, Aronde Gadsden, who was a wide receiver, said that in a playoff game on a 4th down, Jimmy Johnson told him to run a curl. And then when he got to the huddle, Dan told him to run the go. And he's like, well, Jimmy just told me to run the curl, and Dan's telling me to run the go. If I run the go and I'm supposed to run the curl, Jimmy's going to cut me. If I run the curl and Dan's expecting to go, we're going to lose the game. So, well, Dan has the ball, so I'm going to do what Dan says. And Marino ends up throwing a touchdown. That's what I'm talking about here. Like, that is the quarterback makes the decisions. When you're a veteran quarterback and when you've got the cachet to kind of prove that you know how to handle it. Until then, that's the point of these gurus, is they got to walk your hand all the way there. I think Mike McDaniel has done that with Tua. It wouldn't surprise me if Matt LaFleur has done it with Jordan Love. And absolutely, that's what saved Jared Goff's career. And I don't think it's an accident. I don't think it's an accident that Jared Goff, with Sean McVay and Ben Johnson, has been an elite level quarterback, and with anybody else, looks like a bum. Jason in Dover says, I think Levis is gone after this year and Brian Callahan gets his own quarterback. If that's the case.
You saw where the ESPN Field Yates had his new mock, right?
Shedeur Sanders at number was it 4?
4.
At number 4 to the Titans. You know, Field was the one that came on at the Super Bowl.
We played that clip.
About the second round he'll cut a guy before. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there is some truth there. I mean, there's something there. One texter says, I understand what you're saying in the car thing. I get, I'm an electrical foreman. And it reminds me of one time at work, I was telling an older guy to keep his eye on an apprentice. And he said he can put my 9-year-old in my truck in a field with nothing around for a mile and I can handle it. I said, I hope you have only half a mile worth of gas. I can't. I'm done reading that. One texter said, the Titans official Twitter page just posted a Levis dot to Ridley in the corner of the end zone. Must be listening to the show.
Yeah, they did. They showed the video.
What did we say?
Huh?
What did we say?
I don't know.
Did we say that?
Oh, just the offense has been struggling a little bit today.
I mean, the offense has been struggling all of camp. And they struggled against the Seahawks, and they struggled today. Reportedly today, because I didn't see it, but they reportedly struggled. I mean, again, it's like when a player doesn't give up a sack. In training camp, it's, boy, I'll tell you, Dylan Radins had a great rep today against Tavondre Sweat, which is great. It's great. But it's not like anybody gives up 50 sacks a game. Andre Dillard, at one point in time, has stopped all of the best pass rushers in the NFL. Because, again, if he didn't, they just line Nick Bosa up on the other side, and Nick Bosa would rack up 50 sacks. So when you post a video of Levis throwing a touchdown to Ridley and being like, see, it's like, easy there. Everybody covering the team said that practice was, and I'm not trying to pretend like I was at practice or trying to break down practice. I've seen some YouTube videos where I've seen some of these podcasters or whatever, and they're like, here's what happened today at practice. And it's somebody I've never seen at practice. I'm like, how can you do that if you're not at practice? How can you talk about what you saw at practice? How can you break down practice if you didn't see practice? I understand breaking down a game if you're not at the game. Game's on TV. Practice, I don't. Who knows? One texter says, Tannehill told you in the last game that he and Derrick Henry went rogue and called the plays. He spoke in an interview during the Arthur Smith years that Arthur gave him 2 or even 3 play calls to choose from based on what he saw. Downing did not permit that. They ran his single play, period. I don't remember any of that, to be completely blunt. I don't remember any of that.
Nothing
the 3
really
plays,
stands
that's what
out.
Peyton Manning used to do. Remember Peyton would get to the line with 3 plays called, and Peyton would decide what to do. And then what's his name got
Lots
mad?
of Omaha.
What was it? Jeff Saturday got mad, and then he yelled at Manning to run
They
the
did
ball.
have that thing on the sideline, yeah.
Yeah, and then Manning went and yelled at Jeff Saturday, and they got into it, and he said, just block, Jeff, and walked away. What's always funny about those, when the quarterback gets into it with the offensive line, which doesn't happen very often, or at least doesn't happen that we see very often, is it is always the backup quarterback that is the one that's like breaking it up and defending the quarterback.
Playing peacekeeper.
Yeah, but he's always defending the quarterback with the offensive line. Like he's always, it's like when Bill O'Brien and Brady went after each other on the sideline and Brian Hoyer was like trying to get in between them. And it ultimately got so bad that Bill had to come over. Oof. Unbelievable.
Billy O, huh?
Yeah, Bill O'Brien's crazy. I mean, they laugh about it, but like, I don't think that kind of stuff's very funny. Like when you're a grown man and you can't control your temper and you have an important position, I don't think that stuff's funny. Like, I mean, maybe you guys do. Like when there was a video at halftime where O'Brien was walking in to the tunnel and somebody yelled out, this was at Houston. Somebody yells out, hey, Bill O'Brien, you suck. And he went crazy. And like Deshaun Watson had to like hold him back and like guide him towards the locker room. Like if the Titans coach did that, I'd be like, fire him. If Brian Callahan did that, and Brian Callahan would never, ever do that. But if Brian Callahan did that, I would be like, fire him. Make Denard Wilson the coach and move on. Make Bill the coach. I don't care. Make somebody else the coach because this guy is too unstable to be the coach. Now Bill O'Brien has been exited or has been exiled away from any meaningful football. He's now the head coach at Boston College. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Speaking of overrated quarterbacks who have been incredibly babied, did you see what Tua said the other day? I have not commented on this because I've been out the last 2 days, and I have got to. We'll get to that next. First, let's talk about FanDuel Sportsbook. That's right. I love FanDuel Sportsbook. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, and my official sportsbook app. Well, FanDuel has something a little different for you because now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com/JGM to download America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/JGM. 21 and over and present in Tennessee. Full price of NFL Sunday Ticket will be automatically charged seasonally after free trial. No refunds, terms and restrictions, and embargoes do apply. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789.
Can you explain to us the difference in practical terms between having a coach who did believe in you the way that he did and the difference between that and what was happening with Flores?
Yeah. Well, to put it in simplest terms, if you woke up every morning and I told you you sucked at what you did, that you don't belong doing what you do, that you shouldn't be here, that this guy should be here, that you haven't earned this right. And then you have somebody else come in and tell you, dude, you are the best fit for this. Like, you are accurate, you are the best whatever, you are this, you are that. Like, how would it make you feel listening to one or the other? You see what I'm saying? And then you hear it, regardless of what it is, the good or the bad. And you hear it more and more, you start to actually believe that. I don't care who you are. You could be the president of the United States. You have a terrible person that's telling you things that you don't want to hear, or that you probably shouldn't be hearing. You're going to start to believe that about yourself. And so that's sort of like what ended up happening. And it was, I mean, it's basically been 2 years of training that out of not just me, but a couple of the guys as well that have been here since my rookie year all the way till now.
That was Tua. That made some headlines. Tua saying, hey, Brian Flores told me I sucked every day. And then I started to believe it. And other guys on the team started to believe it. And then Mike McDaniel came in and said, no, you're perfect for this. You're our guy. You're the bomb. You're the best. You're the... Again, as is the case almost all the time, the truth somewhere in the middle. Now, it's probably a good thing Tua doesn't listen to this show then. Because, as you all know, I think Tua stinks. But this entire Tua v. Brian Flores controversy that came out of nowhere is actually fascinating to me. First off, congratulations to Brian Flores, who was asked about it yesterday when he did his press conference as being the Vikings defensive coordinator. And he basically said like, oh, no, I'm happy for Tua, and took the high road, which good for him. But the whole situation's crazy to me. The whole Tua thing in general is crazy to me. Now, again, you know that I agree with Brian Flores. I think Tua stinks. But I didn't draft Tua. He did. I mean, think about this. Let's go to the very genesis of the Brian Flores-Tua relationship. And this, again, I know like we're not talking about the Titans here, but this is just so wild to me. Brian Flores became the coach of the Dolphins in 2019. And in 2019, the Dolphins tanked. They tore the team apart. They got rid of Laramie Tunsil. They got rid of Mika Fitzpatrick. They got rid of everybody. They got rid of Ryan Tannehill. They got rid of everybody. That team was god awful. They were going for the number one pick. And the guy who everybody at that point in time assumed was going to be the number one pick was Tua. When the Dolphins decided to tank, Joe Burrow, who would end up being the number one pick, Joe Burrow was harboring a grudge against Jordan Rodgers because of something Jordan Rodgers said on the SEC network about him. Joe Burrow wasn't thinking about going number one overall, and neither was anybody else. So again, the Dolphins were trying to be bad on purpose so they could draft this guy, and Brian Flores was the coach, and Brian Flores knew it because the owner told him and he sued the owner for it. So that's first thing. So again, Brian Flores knew they were going to lose in hopes that they could draft Tua. Joe Burrow becomes Joe Burrow, Tua falls to 5, and they pick him. And once again, Brian Flores was a part of the decision to draft Tua over Justin Herbert, who does not suck. So then for Brian Flores to tear down Tua every day, it's like, really? Like, that's what he did? I mean, you know, when you're a coach, you get one of these. Like, you get one of these quarterbacks, and if you don't develop them, you're out. Unless you end up finding another guy, thank God, the way Belichick did with Brady or Shanahan has with Purdy, Shanahan will never get criticized for Trey Lance, where they lit 3 first-round draft choices on fire because they hit with Mr. Irrelevant. But if they didn't, Shanahan would be in some deep crap. So it's like, that's wild to me. Then Tua did suck when Brian Flores is the coach, which led to Brian Flores getting fired. And the owner thought Tua sucked because the owner got suspended for trying to broker a deal to get Sean Payton, who was under contract with the Saints, and Tom Brady, who was under contract with the Buccaneers, in order to be the coach and the quarterback. Like, he tried to replace Tua. So when Tua's like, imagine if your coach told you you sucked every day and then you'd start to believe it. Well, I wonder, how did you feel when the guy who just gave you $53 million a year, that is essentially getting cheated on? But that didn't bother him, but Brian Flores, with that doesn't make a lot of sense. And then to go full circle, the same owner that got suspended for trying to replace Tua is now the one that gives Tua the big contract. So this whole thing is a wild to me. And not only throwing into the fact that Tua got a new coach and he's got the best receiver in the NFL and he's probably got the best collection of receivers and he still can't win any meaningful games. But all these things have happened for him, and every single person is just sitting there acting like, well, you know, Tua's really, really good, Jared. That's why the Dolphins put up all these yards, because Tua's really, really good. Really? Or is it because he's got Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and a coach who, again, we talk about the guru coaches, who is a guru coach? So the entire Tua experience is wild to me. Brian Flores, even though he said he didn't tank on purpose, his organization tanked on purpose for the sole reason to draft Tua. He knows it. So he's joining that organization with the expectation that they can take Tua. He takes Tua, then he decides he doesn't like Tua. The owner gets suspended for trying to get rid of Tua, but Tua's mad at Brian Flores. He's not mad at the owner. And then all of a sudden, they bring in a new coach and they bring in the best receiver in the league and they draft him another receiver and they put up some points. They can't win any meaningful games, but they put up some points. And now it's like, oh, yeah, everything's good in Dolphin land. And that same owner just gave him $55 million or $53 million a year when he was the one trying to replace him. Am I the only one that thinks this entire thing is just, trying not to use the right word here because I can't use it on the radio, but it's crazy. It's crazy. I don't get it. I don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense. Somebody help me understand this because I don't understand it. 615-737-1025. Here's the other thing. We all need to make an agreement right now when it comes to Tua. Because if you are somebody who loves this show and you listen, you know that I don't think Tua is any good at all. And I really don't. And some of you out there want every time I do this, sit there and say, hey, you don't understand Tua, Jared. You don't get it. Tua is so good. That talentless guy that just left Chicago, he went on there and said, well, if the Dolphins don't sign Tua, they'll be stuck with Skylar Thompson. No, they won't. They'll just go out and go get another quarterback. The same way Tampa got Baker Mayfield. Tampa wasn't stuck with Kyle Trask when Tom Brady retired. But the point I'm making here is this. Tua has the best receivers. Tua has an offensive coach. And Tua doesn't win any meaningful games. So now that he's being paid $53 million a year, let's all make the agreement right here, right now, today, no questions asked. Tua has to win meaningful games this year, or else I was right and everybody else was wrong, and Tua stinks. Are you willing to make that agreement?
I don't know.
Oh, my God. Do we not have any standards around here? It's like, does he have the best set of receivers in the NFL?
They're up there, yeah. I like Hill and I really do like Waddle.
I mean, it's either them or AJ and Devontae, or I wouldn't put Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua ahead of them.
No, probably not.
I wouldn't put Evans and Godwin at this point ahead of them.
No.
I'm trying to think. Ayuk and Debo?
Maybe.
Who would you rather take? Which duo?
That's a good question.
No, it's not. Hill and Waddle.
I'll take Hill and Waddle.
Yes. So he's got the best receivers, and he's getting paid $53 million.
He's got some fast running backs.
And you don't think that it's his responsibility to win a meaningful game this year?
I mean, I don't know about his responsibility. It's the team's responsibility. But if they're in a position to, do well in the playoffs, you'd like to see him not throw a dud out there.
So I think that this is the year. And if Tua doesn't do it, I don't ever want to hear anybody else defend him. He's not good. He's lucky. And I will put my guy on the line too, because I am a believer that Sam Darnold is actually a good quarterback. Not a great quarterback. I don't think Sam Darnold is like a Josh Allen or anything like that. But like right now, I think the Steelers have two bad quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Sam Darnold would be the best quarterback for the Steelers and would be fine. The Steelers would be fine if he was their quarterback. That's how I feel. But if Sam Darnold goes to Minnesota with Justin Jefferson and with Kevin O'Connell calling the plays, quarterback guru, if he goes and he stinks this year, then I'll never talk about Sam Darnold in a good way ever again. I just don't think that's going to happen because I think Sam Darnold's going to have a good year. One texter says, I am not a Tua defender. My only thought is if the Dolphins let him walk and he succeeds, they never hear the end of it. Doesn't matter the resources he has now at receiver. But what are the odds Tua would succeed somewhere else?
Yeah, if he's not going to do it in Miami with the system they have and the receivers they have and the offense they have, I'm not sure, going somewhere else is going to make him that much better.
Like right now, who's a better quarterback? Just straight up. Take the receivers out of it. Take the Tua or Jalen Hurts.
Hurts.
I agree, because Jalen can win some meaningful games. So, again, and I'm not even sold 100% on Hurts. I would pay him if he was my quarterback. I'd pay him where I wouldn't pay Tua. But, there's a lot of guys right now who are better than Tua.
He does have, I do think the system there fits him pretty well.
One texter says, is he Trent Dilfer kind of good? No.
He's better than
No,
Trent
he's
Dilfer.
not, though. Dilfer
Tua?
won meaningful games. Dilfer knew what he was. And more importantly, he knew what he wasn't. And he won meaningful games.
Well, Tua has more arm talent.
Tua cannot win a meaningful game, period.
I guess we'll
Josh
find
says,
out.
I agree to the terms. Tua sucks. Thank you, Josh. Tua stinks. He sucks. And he's like, if your coach told you that you sucked every day, wouldn't you start to believe it? I'm like, if I watch you on Sunday Night Football every time you're on there, crap your pants, I'd think you suck. And that's why I do think you suck. 615-737-1025. 615-737-1025. Let's talk Twice Daily. That's right. And by the way, after I'm done talking about Twice Daily, I'm going to give you something to win. So I'm going to X the phones out right now. I just pressed the X and it didn't X them out.
I got you.
Does this not work?
Couldn't tell you.
Phone. Anywho, but I'll give something away right after this. Let's talk about Twice Daily. At Twice Daily, they've got a burger built for you. That's right. Try their new classic, the jalapeno ranch, or they've got, and this is all coming up, at the end of the month, the Titans burger. They're made to order so you can fix them the way you like them with your choices of cheese, veggies, and other tasting toppings. And if you're looking for a great burger deal, Twice Daily has that too. And again, when it comes to the made to order stuff, nobody's better than Twice Daily. I absolutely love Twice Daily. Get their $6 meal deal, including any made to order burger, potato wedge, and your choice of a 20-ounce Coke or Pepsi. There's no better way to get more meal for your money than Twice Daily. Twice Daily. What are you craving? All right, I promised I'd give something away. So no, do not X that phone until I'm done talking here. And once Ian X's the phones at 615-737-1025, caller 5 will win a pair of tickets to see OAR at the Ryman Auditorium on Sunday, September 1st. Ian, you may now un-X the phones. I want to end the show on a hockey thought. Yeah, I've been out the last 2 days traveling back and forth from here in Canada. And so maybe that's the inspiration for this. But did you guys see what happened with Ryan Johansson's contract? And I know there was a big deal made about the Predators in the Johansson thing, which is apparently the Philadelphia Flyers decided to terminate Ryan Johansson's contract. Now, I believe Ryan Johansson got married over the weekend. And I don't know if that has anything to do with this whole thing is so fakakta. So apparently what happened was Johansson played against the Predators in the last game before the trade deadline with Colorado, and then Colorado traded him in a salary dump to get rid of him by sending him to Philadelphia, who acquired a first-round pick as part of the deal. They then tried to waive Johansson and send him down to the AHL, and nobody took him. And then he said, no, I can't play in the AHL because I have a hip injury, and he missed the rest of the season. Johansson supposedly was still injured, and he's due that $8 million, $4 million of which the Predators have to pay. So out of nowhere the other day, the Flyers announced that they were just terminating the contract. I forget what the exact wording is. They fired him for cause, which I didn't even know you could do in the NHL, but apparently you can. So they fire him for cause. And so the Predators might get the $4 million back on his contract this year. There's going to be a grievance, and then the grievance is going to go to mediation, and then they're going to decide if Ryan Johansson's due the money. I'm sure Ryan Johansson has done plenty of things in his career that would make me not want to pay him to be on my team. I get it. But it just kind of feels like Philadelphia is looking for an excuse not to pay him. So I wouldn't get my hopes up that the Predators are going to recoup that $4 million because I think there's a pretty good chance they're going to lose that grievance. And Johansson's going to get his money. And I kind of think I'm rooting for Johansson. And I don't know why.
Yeah, well, he's a nice guy.
That's not why I'm rooting for him.
Okay.
Because he didn't put forth the effort that he should have put forth as a member of this team. I think it's because, well, never mind. Billy's up next on Tua. Billy, go ahead.
Jared, hear me out. Would you trade Will Levis right now for Tua or not? He literally almost led the NFL in passing last year, or did.
Do you want to hear my answer, or are you just going to cut me off before I tell you the answer? Because the answer is Levis.
You're the king of cutting people off, Jared. Come on, just answer the question.
Right, but it's my show. And I just answered the question, and I said the answer is Levis. If you would maybe pick between Tua or Levis, I would pick Levis. And the reason I would pick Levis is because I don't know what Levis is going to become. He might suck. He might be good. But I know what Tua is, and it ain't good enough.
Okay. So, yeah.
You don't have something to back yourself up. You don't sit there and talk about, oh, no, I'm going to be Billy Tough Guy. Call into the radio show and say, I mean, you're going to talk all this crap about Tua, and you mean to tell me you wouldn't take Tua? That is correct. Okay. Defend your point, caller. Defend your Tua take. Again, Jameis Winston once led the league in passing. That doesn't make you good. I mean, it means that you're not Malik, but it doesn't mean that you're good. So don't give me that Tua almost led the league in passing. You know what's going to happen. The Dolphins are going to make the playoffs as a wild card. They're going to lose in the first round, and everybody will say, but the only reason they got there is because of Tua. Yeah. We got 2 football games on tonight. Thursday Night Football returns. Do we know if any of the starters are going to play in any of these games?
I think I saw Anthony Richardson's playing into the second quarter.
Hot dog. That's it for us. We're out of here. Stillman and Company. We'll see everybody tomorrow at 2.